go, guys. Welcome, everyone. Today it's Saturday. It's August the 13th, 2016. I'm Frosty, and this is MogTalk. If you are new to the show, MogTalk is a podcast where the Final Fantasy XIV community comes together and discusses anything from Chocobo Racing to Savage Raiding. Today, in our discussion, we come back to our job series here, and for today's topic, we have Paladin and Dark Knight, which are considered the quote-unquote main tanks of the game. So to speak on this, I brought two extremely skilled and talented players who are actually extremely familiar with both of the classes and jobs. Let me introduce them here. First, Miyuki Yostuba. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, so good, so good. All right, so how long have you been playing Dark Knight and Paladin?
Actually, Paladin was the first class I ever leveled, and I started playing Dark Knight as soon as we hit A4.
Nice. So when did you start playing?
Around the time Final Coil was released.
Okay, awesome. So you got most of your raiding experiences within this expansion.
Yes.
Awesome. So with, Heaven's Ward, what turns did you do with what job? Like when you were doing progression?
I've actually cleared all 8 turns on all 3 tanks.
On all 3 tanks? So you've done pretty much everything you could do with tanking on every single...
Yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. And next, of course, we have Cupcake Corgi here. What's up, man?
Hey, nice to be here.
Yeah. So same thing for you. How long have you been playing Paladin and Dark Knight?
I've been playing Paladin since also on Final Coil, but I actually started in closed beta 1.0.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah, I've been playing for a while. But
Jeez.
I was a healer main at first. I didn't start playing Paladin until a ton of people needed a Paladin for T13, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. Started playing Dark Knight as soon as I took my break during Gordius. And I kind of still play both, but the group I ran with decided to run a Paladin for Midas Savage.
Okay. So you've been kind of doing a lot of Paladin?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I was the only tank to, at least initially in at least Elysium, to go through the entire tier as a Paladin.
Oh, really?
I could be mistaken, but I can't think of anyone else.
I think there might have been some JP groups, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. But
Yeah.
at least in NAEU, I think I was the first Paladin to go through all of them as a Paladin and not switch off between anything.
Oh, yeah? What about Vox?
I know Vox has... I know he went Dark Knight for A5,
Right.
Dark Knight A6, Paladin A7, Dark Knight A8.
Oh, okay.
But
They'll call you out if your facts aren't true, man.
I'm just
Chat's
going
brutal.
by what I remember.
Okay.
I know that they went Dark Knight Monk A8 for sure because they made the double int debuff thing a thing. They went Paladin Monk for A7. I remember we had a very small discussion for A5 regarding whether Paladin was even worth it.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I know A6 was definitely a Dark Knight fight. So
All
yeah,
right.
he only played Paladin for 1 turn. Okay.
All right. Well, so originally, guys, when I posted this topic to collect questions from Reddit, I wasn't exactly expecting the amount of questions that we got as a result from that. So today's show is pretty much purely formed out of those questions that we collected from Reddit. I've taken all of those questions, I've rearranged them, and I've organized them into a logical flow. And again, today's topic is purely about Dark Knights and Paladins of Final Fantasy XIV. We will be speaking at slightly higher than novice level, so if you're just now leveling a Dark Knight, a lot of stuff that we're saying will not make sense to you. But hopefully, in the grand scheme of everything, it's not so bad. Remember, guys, please ask your questions in the chat so Carrara can collect them. And we can ask them around the end of the show. We'll actually be taking little breaks throughout the show. We'll see how that works. As long as the question is relevant to what we're talking about at that time, I might ask it in the middle before we change our segments. We have a lot of segments today. And whether it's about being a better tank or what kind of Pokemon the guests like, either way, ask those questions. Although the Pokemon questions might be a little bit later towards the end of the show. So let's go ahead and get on with it. First, I want to talk to you guys about being a main tank just in general. Ideally, most people level up their jobs expecting to play solely that job throughout all of content. So kind of one of the first questions I have for you, it seems like it's almost considered, mandatory at this point for you to play both Dark Knight and Paladin if you're going to be a serious main tank in in-game progression. Do you guys feel that people are kind of forced into those roles right now? And I'll ask you first, Cupcake.
Well, I don't think it's mandatory. I do definitely think it's optimal if you do. Even more optimal if you know how to play both. But the disadvantages of each tank can be covered by a change in team comp. It all depends on how comfortable your raid is with being able to switch roles and what the fight entails in terms of what kind of mitigation is needed or just what kind of utility is needed as a whole. I know in Gordius, for example, it seemed like Dark Knight was the way to go for everything, but that was purely, at least during progression, because of the harder DPS checks that were needed. You needed the optimal comp if you wanted to be, world top 10, for example, right? And Paladin just couldn't do that because they needed TP. They didn't have easy stance swaps. They just did lower DPS inherently from a Dark Knight, and feels like the only turn they could do well in was a 2 with a bunch of mobs and physical damage going out. Otherwise, everything was just a Dark Knight fight, and there was absolutely no reason not to run Dark Knight. But to better answer your question, or at least directly answer your question, not mandatory. I still think Paladin is really good, but Dark Knight just shines way better in some fights. So.
Okay. And so speaking as, let's talk about, kind of when the tier first comes out, where it's a little bit rough there. Not when everyone's overly geared and we're at the point we are right now. And Miyuki, so do you feel like you could level up just straight Paladin and clear all the turns without too much more stress than you would have if you went straight Dark Knight, or vice versa? Do you still have to have Dark Knight for one turn, Paladin for one turn when you're doing that kind of earlier progression? Not like world first progression, but just earlier progression?
I don't think you would need Dark Knight. If the only thing that might change is you might need to tank swap with your warrior at different times.
Okay. So basically, you guys think it doesn't matter at all. You guys could play either Dark Knight or Paladin and do all the content without that much hindrance.
With the current patch, yes.
Yeah, current patch definitely. Okay. I'll feel bad for some of my healers for some of the fights if I decide to go the least optimal route, but whatever.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
And the main reason, I'm asking this too is because it seems like most of the people come up and they will say stuff like, well, for this turn I have to do this. I feel like it's required for my group for me to be a Dark Knight because we need whatever for this one fight because it's more magical damage. There's so much magical damage in this fight. And so people get discouraged playing Paladin. But this stuff can be mitigated in other ways, right? There's other ways to get around that stuff. It's not so cutting edge that you can't still clear the turn, right? Or am I wrong?
You're right. Okay. It's just I feel like the amount that a raid would have to compensate depending on your tank choice, it's very limited to whether or not the raid can actually pull it off, on an individual level. Otherwise, I don't know. I still stand by the fact that Paladin and Dark Knight can clear anything. It just needs to be adjusted for accordingly.
Okay. Just people have to have an idea of what the strat needs to be like. It might be a little bit different for one group than the other group.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. So that makes sense. And so to go past this point, a lot of people come into in-game right now and they don't see Warrior as a main tank. They see it as an off-tank DPS. How often do you guys actually switch it up? Do you guys ever switch it up where you're like, okay, well, the Warrior is going to main tank this time, and I'm going to go out there and get a really good Paladin or Dark Knight parse?
I'll let Miyuki take this one.
It's actually more beneficial the most optimal way to tank is to have your Warrior pulled with Unchain. And during some point, usually when the Warrior is pacified, the Dark Knight would provoke there. Because the Dark Knight has access to Blood Price and Reprisal while he's tanking. Okay.
So it makes sense to just have it pull but not main tank the entire fight. Like if you're gonna have one tank the entire fight, it would be Warrior pull and then the other you'd switch out, right? Or could you have theoretically the main tank be a Warrior the entire time? I mean, I know that doesn't really work out too much in this situation, right? Because we're also talking about savage rating tiers where main tank's really a weird word to use because you're both tanking the fight, right? You just have to switch at certain times.
Yeah, that's why I don't really like using the term main tank, off tank. How do I explain this? I think Layla Bell said it best one time. I can't remember where he said it or where I read this, but people need to get rid of the term main tank and off tank and needs to start realizing which tank is most optimal to tank and when or why. Warrior Unchained Pull is definitely the best for both aggro and for raid DPS as a whole, especially now that they have so much access to self-healing. You can spend like, I don't know, 9 GCDs without having to heal a warrior ever. In A8, you can spend the entire Onslaughter phase without having to heal the warrior ever. And it's just better, right? But it does come down to whether or not your tanks have an ability to map out cooldowns better, or not better, but optimally. There are some instances where a paladin pulling the entire fight, for example, would be better than a warrior ever pulling, maybe just because raid DPS doesn't take a hit with a paladin main tanking in the beginning because they already inherently take less damage, for example, right, with blocks, and it won't affect your healer DPS. But it really does just come down to proper planning and understanding of what kind of damage is coming out and which tanks are better suited to mitigating that.
Okay. So honestly, it's in Final Fantasy, there's not really a main tank, off tank kind of scenario. It's two tanks, right?
Yeah. I mean, people might be mistaking a main tank for the person who's going to pull first, but like as you said, each tank is going to be tanking something at one point in the fight. Whether or not they're more active on the main boss or on the boss itself, shouldn't be the designation of what or who the main tank is. It's just whatever's most optimal.
Okay, Miyuki, what are your thoughts on it, man?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with him. I think a point that Xeno likes to emphasize is that him and his co-tank usually share responsibilities throughout the fight, and I think that every group should strive to get that synergy going.
Okay, so that makes sense. And so you just don't have one person like actually responsible for saying, hey, I'm going to be the tank. You're just going to come in and help whenever we need you to pull off me, right? And so you're not going in saying, hey, Paladin, I'm going to tank the entire fight, but hey, I have debuffs, so we got a tank swap, and as soon as I can get back to tanking, I'm going to go back to tanking. You just do whatever you think actually works for that fight to where you're getting the most DPS out, plus the most damage reduction out, I guess, at the same time, right?
Yeah. And it goes into more in-depth things, at least when I think about it. Even though, for example, a warrior with like a triple fell cleave deliverance pull, right, just as an off tank might be the most DPS for the warrior, it might not necessarily be the best DPS for the healers, and maybe it doesn't necessarily equal out, or maybe it's actually less total raid DPS, and there's just a lot of different things, but for the most part, what you said was correct.
Okay. So I'm going to aim this question over here at Miyuki. I'm going to say Miyuni, sorry. My buddy Miyuni, just like his name comes out of my mouth so easily. Miyuki. So the other thing that I want to ask is there any situation where a warrior should be taking the boss the entire fight almost every single time except for, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. Not exactly like main tank, but like, is it more optimal to have him going in there and taking the brunt of the damage than having a Paladin or having a Dark Knight, or is it still a Paladin and a Dark Knight?
I think one of the examples of that is in A6. A warrior can actually do the entire blaster fate or boss without a single heal, and Vortexer as well. So
basically, warriors are extremely optimal for being the only tank taking the boss at some points. And where you can just have healers DPS, everyone DPS, and ignore everything. Warriors just overpower everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. But can you not do that on Paladin and Dark Knight? Dark Knight has some kind of self-healing, but it's not like as much, I guess?
Yeah, Dark Knight needs to be in grit to self-heal with Soul Eater. Paladins need to pray they don't get interrupted with their self-heals with, what is it? I can't clemency. Yeah, clemency. Warriors have a self heal every 3 GCDs if they want to spam Storm's Path, which isn't optimal, but they can. They have Enhanced Bloodbath, they have Equilibrium, they have Thrill of Battle, they have Inner Beast, they have just a bunch of everything. They can keep themselves up for a good 2 minutes without needing a single heal, maybe a regen and a pet, the Scholar pet. But
So, I mean, like, let's just go ahead and ask the question then. Like, why do people not bring double warriors if it's so efficient in both DPS and tanking? I mean, where do Paladins and Dark Knight come in and shine and make that just make no sense at all to do double warrior?
oh, God.
Come on, you gotta defend it, guys. We're on the Paladin Dark Knight show. You guys have to defend the Paladins and Dark Knights.
I can't defend Paladin. I can, but
Okay, defend Dark Knight.
I think double warrior, like for fights like A7, double warrior inherently takes a lot more damage than, let's say, Paladin and warrior. A7's mostly physical damage, and a Paladin can mitigate most of the tank busters by themselves without putting the healers in a lot of stress.
Yeah, the amount of damage blocked from a Paladin over a fight like A7, which is anywhere between 7 to 13 minutes, depending on how good your rate is, it's insane, especially with Paladin strength down debuff on autos, or Dark Knight if you don't have a monk. The amount of magic damage, delirium.
Yeah.
And the other thing is warriors only really have one cooldown on demand with actual mitigation, being vengeance. So if you can't, I guess you can only really use vengeance once or twice before a Paladin or Dark Knight is better in terms of just soaking damage, because they have 3 to 5 cooldowns they can use just for pure mitigation.
All right, so you think that having that Paladin or Dark Knight, are we saying that it just brings more utility and overall?
Hey, to Zeno, I did say on demand. Okay, you need 5. You need the 5 stacks for a warrior. Raw intuition. It requires you to face the boss, not get crit rolled, because crit rolls before parry. Like, it's not as on demand as you believe. Okay, just saying.
Just go ahead and give it a middle finger.
It's not even a middle finger. It's just how the game rolls. Damage, crit rolls before parry and block. So if you get crit, for example, on Upland or Doom, and you have only raw intuition, you're still taking an 8k auto. It's like, it's not the warrior's fault. It's just the game.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, beating game mechanics is hard. You're right. I'm sorry. Anyway.
All right, so having a Dark Knight and warrior and a Paladin and warrior is more optimal, simply because they bring more to the fight than just like the overlap of what a warrior can do, especially with like, you can't double up on Storm's Path, right? But you can add in that physical down, or you can add in that magical down with a Dark Knight or a Paladin. So that's really the benefit that you're bringing in, is just a little, it's more complementary, I guess.
Yeah, and then there's also the thing about a limit break penalty for having multiple rolls.
Well, yeah. We'll ignore limit break penalty.
You can't ignore that. You can't ignore that. It's like it's such a big thing when in Prague. Like one of EM Raid 1's arguments for not sacking water at the end of A8 was you don't get a limit break 3, right? Mm-hmm. And that's still more DPS than you can make up in the amount of GCDs you get by not having to pull off the boss. There are things that you need to think about in Prague. And
well, in terms of like class design and not being forced in there by a simple mechanic that says, hey, we're going to punish you because you're trying something that is more optimal.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
Is that it just makes sense to kind of have a Dark Knight or Paladin in there for the utility. That's what they are, utility tanks, I guess, right? Or am I just throwing bullshit out there?
Utility, and I would say more reliable mitigation, I suppose.
More reliable mitigation.
I'll just say
you're gonna trigger him again,
since people are they don't like the words I've used.
All right, Miyuki.
I know Zeno's point that raw intuition is on demand, but like a good warrior will use that properly, like in the right place for his berserk for the triple fell cleave and as mitigation.
Oh shit! You just said a good warrior to Zeno. He's not.
Yeah, he is a good warrior.
See if he runs a speedrun with you again. Oh man. Okay, so let's jump off that point for just a second here. let's actually talk about when you guys are tanking. Almost every single tank is tanking in or offensive stance almost the entire fight. All right, that's just how tanks work now. They're mentally trained to be in an offensive stance almost the entire fight and only use their defensive stuff as like a cooldown. Is that right, or am just imagining that?
I say every fight by A8. If you leave tank stance in A8, you must hate your healers or something.
Oh, I think a lot of tanks hate healers. I do agree with that.
I can't think of a time I can drop Shield Oath during most of A8 without relying on either stupid amount of heals or just dying. I don't know.
Right. So, Miyuki, I'll ask you first then on this. So when you're actually tanking in these DPS stances, how do you... Right now, a lot of people are having issues with warriors completely out-imitating them, right? They hold way more threat with their combos versus your combos. Is that true? Like a Dark Knight and a warrior sitting there attacking the same thing, both in a DPS stance, warriors are always going to come back and get the most threat? Or am I imagining that too?
Well, I know Xeno's very outspoken about this, but if you're not tanking and you're about to pull off of your Paladin or Dark Knight, you should just be doing Storm's Eye.
Okay. So really it comes down to the warrior backing off a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, actually, mathematically, I can't remember the potency for a combo Butcher's Block, or a Butcher's Block combo.
It's 30 less than... I mean, it's 30 more than a Storm's Eye combo.
Oh, I mean in versus other tanks. Because I think the biggest reason why warriors get more hate is because they have it in conjunction with MAME. Mm-hmm. And MAME just gives you more potency, period. And inherently means more hate, right? But
right.
I know that Savage Blade on a Paladin is better than a Skull Thunder in terms of potency, so it would be...
But that's like the second tier, right?
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, like... I think that... I'll look it up when I'm muted and not typing up a storm, but
okay.
I'm pretty sure that it's because of MAME. The increased damage with MAME allows for a warrior to have more hate just inherently.
All right. So is there any tricks that you can do as a Dark Knight or a Paladin to keep more hate besides just going into tank stance and not using a ninja? Is there any way to like really get away with that, or is it always you got to tell the warrior to back off a little bit? Miyuki, what's your opinion on it?
I mean, the warrior should be looking at the aggro. If they want a Butcher's Block.
Okay.
If they're obviously going to pull and they don't want to, I don't think they should be Butcher's Blocking.
Like, what kind of potency difference are we looking at besides using...
A lot of it is the procs that Paladins and Dark Knights get. Reprisal and Shield Swipe. Mm-hmm. I think Talkeru had a Reddit post, and he did the math on it, and overall, a Dark Knight would lose more damage from not having those procs than a warrior would from Butcher's Blocking the whole fight.
Oh, wow, really? So, basically, if you're a Dark Knight or Paladin, you just have to be in tank stance sometimes if you're competing with a warrior for threat. Unless if you're communicating and you're able to tell this warrior to back the F off, right?
For the most part, I would assume so, yeah.
Is there anything that could be done to fix that issue? I mean, is there a way to even fix it? I mean, when we start thinking about this in terms of someone is always going to have more threat than the other jobs, right? Unless if they make everything cookie cutter exactly the same, doing the same potency and the same threat with the same combo, one is always going to have more than the other. If you guys start off and say you start off in tank stance for, I don't know, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, does that give you enough bonus in the end to like stay ahead of the warrior, or are they still going to catch up?
It did for me in Prague,
Okay.
But my off tank Cesare was very very vocal and very aware of where he was on aggro, so I might be a little biased with that, or my answer might be a little affected by that. But I still think that's more than enough, at least for Paladin. I don't know how it is
Okay.
for Dark Knight these days, but they do get Dark Arts power slashes whenever they need it. So
Miyuki, what's your thoughts on it?
Uh,
If you
at
start in tank
most,
stance, are you okay?
yeah, at most, the Dark Knight should do one power slash and tank slants to start off the fight.
Okay.
this is again assuming there's no ninja, because if you have a ninja, then you just yell at your ninja to use his
Ninja should always
his
do it, right?
skills. So use your damn skills.
Ninja's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get back to the other point that we said about a warrior actually starting off the pool. So let's say a warrior starts the pool, and he goes in Unchained, and you provoke right at pacification. You use your tank stance, you go in for a couple of global cooldowns, and then you go back to that. Are you ahead enough of the warrior at that point? Because you stole his Imity, all right? And he has that pause because of pacification. Unless if he has Warrior's Payon, I guess, or Wondrous Payon. I say Warrior's Payon because that's what it's used for, right?
Yeah, Warden.
Warden's Payon, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So is that the most optimal thing, is to always just have your warrior jump in there, do his thing, pacification, tank swap, and then you're good to go? Would that fix maybe the threat issue too, or?
Not necessarily. If the warrior keeps butchers blocking, but because of Berserk, they'll eventually
Right.
pull aggro.
Yeah, I mean, it'll solve the aggro with the rest of the raid, but not with the warrior himself. No.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, guys. Warriors are fucking shit, man. They're gonna come in and pull.
You mean too good, right?
Yeah, they're gonna come in and pull stuff off of you all the time. You just have to account with that with Imity. Or have a clear discussion with your warrior that he should be doing I instead of Butcher's Block every single time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so one more thing, go past this being a main tank. The question, it's pretty much pulling straight from the question. A lot of people in the community think that Warrior and Scholar kind of upset the game balance in a way by being too good. And a lot of stuff that we talked about right now kind of talks about a Warrior being kind of too good. Regardless of like maybe just a raid comp, Warrior and Scholar is going to have a place in Savage for every single group. And if you don't have them in there, then it's weaker than it would be if they were in there. And that's kind of the general thought. Do you guys feel that that's kind of a ridiculous thing, or is that something that can't be avoided?
Let's start with me.
Start
I have
with
a lot
Miyuki.
of thoughts since I play both healer and tank.
I can't really speak for Scholar, but I think Warrior is just a really well-designed class.
Okay.
I don't think it's overpowered.
You just think same thing with Warrior. It's just a well-designed class, right?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me your thoughts. Cupcake. Tell me your thoughts.
See. I don't know. My answers are gonna be so weird just because.
Give us the odd and weird and awkward.
Well, it's mainly because when I think of game balance, I think of it from like a game dev standpoint, because that's what I do for a living. I'm
Okay.
a game dev. So, but warriors have no weaknesses, and because they have no weaknesses, people think they're fine. They're great all around tanks. They do a lot of damage. They can maintain if they need to, but there needs to be a trade-off in a game that has a class system, and they don't have one. There's absolutely no reason not to have one. Both warrior and scholar, like. Warriors do the most damage. They have the most self heals. If they're skilled enough, like what Zeno was saying, I do agree that they have a lot of mitigation options if they know what they're doing, if they plan it out well enough. They have the best prog skills in the game: Path, Equilibrium. Like that's how do you skip off on a self healing 10% raid mitigation skill? Like I don't understand how that's okay. They have the highest health pools, which sometimes is worth more than pure mitigation because you can survive things without even trying. I don't understand. Warriors they just need to back off.
We're on the Dark Knight Paladin show, and we're all saying that Warriors are crap. They're just like overpowered, ridiculous, and we hate them, right? That's the
I
Warrior
think they
Dark
are.
Knight show.
Like I think they are. A lot of Warriors will fight me on this, but it's just they're broken. I don't know. Scholars are a little harder to say the same thing. I do think that they are overpowered, but only if you know how to play them well.
Okay.
Because they are pretty damn hard to play. Otherwise, same thing. They can heal well if they know how to heal, if they know how to control their pets. They buff raid DPS if they're using Celine. They have I don't understand why they allow crit adlo to play. Is the most dumb thing in the game. I don't understand giving everyone a 12k shield. Like, is that okay, really?
Mm-hmm.
They have a raid-wide mitigation with soil if they know how to use it. I don't know. I just think they're really strong too. But the thing about Scholar, and I won't go into it too much because this isn't a Scholar talk or a healer talk, but
Mm-hmm.
there is quite a differentiation in skill between like the general player and the top raid players. So
Oh yeah.
they're never going to nerf Scholar. They just need to find a healer that can do what they can do.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys think that maybe things do need to be more balanced out with the tiers and tanks, at least, right? So excluding healers, we'll just jump out of that conversation. Going just towards tanks, do you think there needs to be a little bit more balance in between everything? Just a way to make like jobs more want it?
I think paladins definitely need more damage because I think uh, SE or Yoshi P said that paladins are supposed to be the more defensive tank, so their damage is lacking. But I don't think that's really the case. They don't really outshine defensively more than any other tank currently, but like their damage pales in comparison.
Yeah, and what I'm mostly afraid of in terms of rebalancing for the next tier or whatever is that they don't need to up the appeal of other classes. They need to lower the appeal of the OP classes. And I don't know to what extent they can do that without pissing off the community and making them making the jobs useless.
Right.
For paladins though, they do need if they're going to buff anything with paladin, it just be their TP consumption. Uh,
Okay.
any comp that runs paladin will generally run monk for the int down debuff, and if you have a paladin and monk, that means you're going to need to play TP, which lowers rate DPS for your support, your range support DPS, and there's a lot of implications to running a paladin right now, and it's not fair for them. But
Okay.
yeah.
All right, now saying all this, everything's been said right now. You guys feel this way. This is kind of how the community feels in response. But you still play Dark Knight Paladin. Why do you guys play Dark Knight Paladin when this is the situation?
I play paladin because they're an enabler class.
Okay.
Uh,
They're
if you really wanted to spoil the shit out of one of your teammates, the paladin can do it the best, guaranteed. I mean, obviously, other than like Astro solo cards, Astro solo cards are stupid, but uh, paladins can. They're just really good. I don't know. They up your healer DPS. You can do stupid amounts of cheese like A6 Brawler, for example, the single drill. You can just cover a melee that wants a parse, and the damage will be transferred onto the paladin instead of your melee. For A7, Hollowed requires absolutely nothing from your healers. A6 Swindler, Hollowed requires nothing from your healers. You can just stand there for 10 seconds and let them AoE the hell out of the fight. Uh, A8, A7, yeah, you can hollowed 6-stack Uplander going into merry-go-round, and that's just 7 people or 8 people full DPSing with absolutely no worry about damage up until the triple sizzle spark. But that's why I play it. I don't know. It's just fun. I think it's fun being useless individually.
Being useless individually.
but then just helping other people do well is fun. I don't know.
Okay. Miyuki, what's your opinion on it, man? Why do you play Dark Knight? Why do you play Paladin?
I played Dark Knight and Paladin because my raid needs it, but Dark Knight is actually pretty fun. I would prefer it more than Paladin because Paladin only has 2 combos really that you want to use, and Dark Knight has a lot of thinking and pre-planning for MP management, so it's a lot more proactive, I think.
So why do you play it over Warrior, though?
Yo, Warrior is so boring, dude.
Is that why? Is it boring?
Warrior is so boring. I don't know.
Well, this is a Paladin and Dark Knight show, but I actually was a Warrior main before, but unfortunately my co-tank is a Warrior, so...
So you play it because you feel like it makes sense to not go double Warrior and that it should be, Dark Knight Warrior or Paladin Warrior, right? And that's the only reason you're playing is because it complements the other job well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know some people might disagree with me, but I think I prefer a Paladin or a Dark Knight over a double Warrior for progression sake.
Okay. Just because it's safer, or why?
Yeah, because of Hologround and Living Dead, really.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that we made that clear too, because we bashed on everything and Warrior and Dark Knight or Paladin and Dark Knight for a little bit there. I wanted to know why you guys in the end played it, and so basically because you like helping people out, Cupcake. You like being able to help people out, and Miyuki, because it makes sense in a general comp, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. So let's go on to this next topic here. Actually, let's see. Do we have any actual relevant viewer questions, or are they all troll questions? We can ask a question here. And so Zero, he wants to know: do you guys think that Paladin should have more defensive moves?
I think I don't know if more is a better way to put it. They need to make Sheltron not blow. And Sheltron's amazing in all respects, other than the fact that it can be triggered by an auto attack. I don't know if anyone remembers the Heavensward trailer where the Paladin blocked this giant fireball with Sheltron, and if you try to do that in this game, it's like a fucking joke. Yeah. They need to do something that makes it more impactful, I think. And they need to give, I don't know, maybe some kind of cooldown overhaul, because you have one cooldown every 120 120 seconds, and that's not enough for any tank, I think, but whatever, that's just me. They probably will give them something for 4.0, but who's going to play Paladin 4.0 anyway, right? So
I mean, they might play Samurai, who knows, right?
Oh, I hope. Samurai Dancer, please. Thank you.
I would play a Dancer. That would most likely be a healer, right?
Yeah, melee healer.
Yeah. So good. All right, I'm going to ask this next question at you, Miyuki. Hydromancer says, should warriors be allowed to have a skill ceiling that makes them have 0 weakness when Paladin and Dark Knight cannot make up for their weaknesses with skill to that degree? So do you think like the skill ceiling is too high for warriors, I guess is the question?
I mean, the skill ceiling is pretty high, but
but it's not too high.
I think, like, if you were to achieve that level of planning to make you that good at warrior, like, it should be fine, because it's pretty hard to achieve that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go into the next part. I actually want to talk about, and we'll go into more viewer questions as we come by and are a little bit more relevant towards what we're actually talking about. But I want to actually talk a little bit about progression in general, and having optimal comps. When you are doing tank like progression, or you're doing progression in general, I guess. What tank do you feel is best to go in blind without knowing any kind of damage output, knowing nothing about the fight? Would you go in as a Paladin, or would you go in as a Dark Knight?
Paladin, most likely.
All right.
It's like, yeah, Paladin, but I'll explain after Miyu answers.
Miyuki, what do you think?
I think I prefer Dark Knight.
Okay. So let's hear the Paladin point of view first. All right, so why would you go in as a Paladin?
Okay, well, most people... Okay, well, actually, just in terms of, like, ignoring the class-specific, Bulwark versus Dark cards thing, right? Because one's physical, one's magic. Just in pure numbers, Paladin already has more mitigation. Dark Knights have more damage, that's for sure. But it's only about a 10% difference now, because Shield Oath got buffed. And I just think that the amount of damage blocked, or the amount of damage mitigated over time by doing absolutely nothing, by being a Paladin, is going to be worth more than the extra damage you get as a Dark Knight. Yes, Hologround has a higher cooldown, but most fights you only use it once anyway. I also think that Cover, Veil, Clemency, Stone Skin are all invaluable prog tools. And what was it? The amount of damage mitigated by Dark Arts Dark Mind will never amount the amount of total damage blocked throughout an entire fight as a Paladin. And this is purely from a tank perspective, but like I can never compete with a Dark Knight with numbers like DPS. If it's a tight DPS check, then I will find a way as a Paladin to make up for it. But I still never reach a Dark Knight's numbers. But there are ways.
Okay. Miyuki, why would you pick Dark Knight over Paladin if you're going in blind?
This is going to be weird, but I actually value Dark Mind a lot because of how all the recent fights have worked.
Okay.
I would say Paladin's probably better in A5 and A7, but a Dark Knight, I mean, maybe you do block a lot of damage in A7, but I don't think that would be detrimental to progression.
Okay.
But
without knowing any kind of what magic output damage or physical output damage, you just kind of go in there. You think having a Dark Knight's just safer because of what Square Enix has been doing recently with their fights?
yeah. Like in A8, if you were to take a Paladin into the bot phase, you would most likely have them be tanking the 2 bots during the orbs phase instead of having the Dark Knight go around and pick up the orbs. And with Brawler doing single buster and picking up the green orbs, that's a lot of magic damage. That's a lot more helpful to have a Dark Knight, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, well, that makes sense. It's pretty straightforward answers. I don't know if there's anything I can ask you about that. So I'll just go ahead and ask you to the next question. And this mainly goes into when we're looking at world progression and everything else, and we're dealing with Paladins in general. They got hit really hard in Gordius. Like, they got so much bad rep. Everyone was like, you can't play Paladin because Dark Knight is definitely always the better pick for these fights because it's all magical damage. Kind of what you're saying, Miyuki, kind of expecting how they do the fights to kind of favor Dark Knights. In this state, do you guys still think there's any reason why Paladin should be given some sort of bad rep towards doing the fights that are currently out?
Only because it means you need a monk in Prague.
Okay. The only
Yes.
bad part is that you need a monk because you have a Paladin.
Yes, and this isn't to hate on monk. It's just, again, thinking about optimal raid DPS, which is usually needed in Prague. Dragoon Ninjas just can't be beat in Prague right now. Yeah, it sucks, but yeah. I mean, unless you have like a god monk, then I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. But yeah.
All right. Miyuki, do you feel like Paladins are still looked at pretty poorly and that they should be kind of like how Astros are right now? Everyone thinks Astros kind of suck, although a lot of discussion I've had recently has been that Astros are actually really strong. They just have to be...
The biggest thing with Astros is the solo feeding that goes on.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty much it. But I mean, like, Paladins aren't in that same spot, right? They're not kind of in an odd, weird spot, right?
No, they are where they are. I know AST has they're better than most people think they are, but Paladin is just where they are.
Okay, they are where they are. Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty straightforward. I mean, the lowest DPS tank. They're just bulky things, and yeah, but I don't know.
And that's not bad, though, right? I mean,
it's not, but until there's like giant physical tank busters, other than double rocket punch, which is a fucking 4-second, 5-second cast, what you can prepare for.
Right.
There's like no reason to really run physical mitigation like as a must thing, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Poor Paladins, but I still love them. Doesn't matter.
All right, so are you guys both putting Paladin like at the bottom of the list of the 3 tanks?
Yeah, for sure.
For damage, yeah. Yeah, I can't say that in terms of what I think is most useful, but for damage, definitely.
That's kind of depressing to hear, guys. This is turning out like the Astro show we had the other time where like everyone came on and they're like, they're really not that good. Play Warrior. Come on, give me something to go on. Why? Tell me Paladin's wonderful. Tell me Dark Knight's wonderful.
They are wonderful. Dark Knight is amazing. I love Dark Knight.
Okay.
I just can't hope for other people to share the same reasons why I'm enthusiastic about Paladin, because unless you take on a pure team play prog mindset, Paladin is fucking worthless otherwise. If you're there for your FF logs, EPing, if you're there to...
So I want to cut FF logs completely out of the equation when we're talking about like Dark Knight Paladin right now. Because FF logs is something that if you're not doing any kind of standard comp at all. You're running single Astro and everything else as much damage as possible. And
it's
so
not necessarily true.
Isn't it? No, isn't that true?
I think most of the tank logs are like pretty clean of that at the moment.
Most of the tank logs, I say most because there are one or two that are pure padded parses, but most of the tank parses are standard comp speedruns. And that stuff you can do without relying on someone else to help pad your numbers. You know, it's just playing optimally, very optimally, and but yeah, Paladin's never going to be on top of that list, and regardless if padded or not, Paladin will never be on top of that list unless it's a really short fight. But yeah.
So, but I'm talking in terms of like the average player coming out and trying to progress and clear fights.
Mm-hmm.
Less of like super crazy hard DPS optimal stuff. In that sense, are Paladins still in a perfectly great position? And I mean, I almost sound like I'm reaching right now for a compliment for Dark Knights and Paladins. But I mean, usually when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about in terms of people who aren't competing for top parses, people who aren't pushing the top of DPS and trying to skip half of a fight in Savage, right? I'm talking about people who are going out there with Savage groups and they're just trying to clear it like a normal group. Paladins and Dark Knights are still strong?
Paladins are pretty strong because like allow for more room for error on your healers and your tanks part.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah.
All right.
Paladins in that respect, and as I've said, they're just there to soak damage, and it's great. And I think they're the best at it, other than warriors, but that's a different thing. But
okay,
no warrior is going to stay in Defiance the entire fight, so that doesn't really count.
No,
so.
Do warriors even use Defiance? Like I had this whole argument the other day. Like this just like it's not
they use Defiance for the pre-pull ad load deploy. That's about it.
I mean that's pretty much it. I mean, and that's a whole nother show where we can talk about the mindset of what tanks are and healers are currently, and how world prog and like top level players are out there and they've seen and how they're doing right now is awesome. But then these other players come in and they're like, how do I play this job? And what they compare themselves to are people who are super pros at actually playing the jobs. And they're not playing with super pros, so that stuff doesn't complement each other as well as people think.
Yeah, and I still attribute that to not only FFLugs, but the fact that the only real metrics that we have for success in this game right now are DPS. No one really likes to look at damage taken as a bad stat unless healers are really struggling. No one really takes into account how much damage was mitigated. No one really cares about that right now. But
okay.
I don't know.
Well, we'll get into optimizing DPS here in a second because that actually will bleed in pretty well to it. But the first thing I want to ask you, while we're still doing progression and optimal comps and everything else, when we're talking about healers that kind of complement you guys really well going into it, do Dark Knights and Paladins have healers that complement them better than, like, say, for example, do Astros complement Paladins better than Astros complement Dark Knights? Or
I don't think so. Not anymore. Not with the change of Lustrate. Lustrate going from percent to potency. I don't think there's anything different.
All right. So it doesn't matter what healer comp you get. It works out perfectly fine. All right, go ahead. Go.
You want the scholar, but I mean, if it's purely in terms of who heals what better, I don't think there's a real difference. But I don't know, I just like scholars because shields.
So I mean, but we're talking in terms. All right, if you run like a scholar, Astro, do they not struggle with Dark Knights and Living Dead?
No, you can benefit to ED and what's that other one? Aspected Benefic, all within a GCD and a half, and it usually tops the Dark Knight. If not, you can just pop Sinistry and do it the same thing, and it'll work.
And throw less straight out.
I don't really need one.
Don't need one at all?
I know you had Shrinth on your Astro show. He plays Astro for our group, and whenever our Dark Knight uses Living Dead, he can just use 2 GCDs and it's topped off, unless he accidentally blows his essential dignity on something else. But otherwise, it's really not. But it's not too much of a big deal if you know it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's not like a huge deal to have a white mage in there to complement your Dark Knight.
If anything, white. Okay, this is out of raid, so like dungeons and whatnot. Having a white mage is actually bad for Paladin if your white mage is using holy, because then stuns on enemies or on mobs decreases the effectiveness of your dark. The hell's it? Blood price of your blood price. Because if they're stunned, they can't auto attack you, right? If you're not getting attacked, you're not getting mana.
Okay.
That's the only negative I can think of. But as in terms of advantages, I don't think of anything else.
Okay. Miyuki, what's your thoughts on it?
I don't play healer as much as Cupcake, but I'll have to agree with him.
So it doesn't matter what healer comp you have; it works out no matter what, as long as it's not like double Astro or like something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nocturnal Astro's ass.
Benny is a lot easier to heal Living Dead with because you can time it at the last second.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of really the point too, though, is that you get the optimal Living Dead, and so you technically get like a 20-second take whatever damage you want thing, right? If you use Benediction.
I think 20 is stretching it. I think 15 at most.
Yeah,
15.
I mean, if you're like a god and can use the entire 10 seconds of the buff before it procs, then yeah, I guess 20 seconds. But
okay,
yeah,
I gotcha. All right, so it's really kind of like 12 seconds if you would have to aim it at something, because they have to do the damage to you. So a second or two of them doing the damage to you, then 10 seconds pop Benediction, and then you're done.
Yeah. Okay. Like 12 to 15 is about right.
All right. Well, good. There you go, guys. That question's answered for you guys on Reddit. Going back to when you guys were doing progression, what did you guys do progression with? Is there anything that you would have changed comp-wise, or do you feel like that you guys went in completely optimal?
I went Paladin, Monk, Summoner, Bard. There's no way. That's like the opposite of optimal. We just hated each other ourselves, I guess.
Okay,
so,
I gotcha.
I mean, I don't know if I would have changed my comp because I love the guys that we ran with for the most part. But I mean, if I wanted an optimal comp, that was definitely not the way to go.
All right. So basically, you would just change up the DPS. Oh no! Cupcake, are you still there? Cupcake! Miyuki, are you there? Miyuki? They're gone, guys. Hello?
Hi. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. That's weird.
Yeah, well, that was you hosted the call, right? Oh no. Let's see if it comes back. We'll give it a second here. I mean, stream's still live.
I can hear you guys. That's kind of weird.
I can see you too. You're good.
Yeah. Strange.
It's a bit laggy.
Okay.
Sounds a little bit laggy.
Let me check something real quick.
All right. It seems like it's coming back here.
Yeah, I got this new modem, and it's ass. I don't know. I need to change it back.
Okay, I gotcha. All right. I think we're all back, guys.
My bad.
It's all right. It's all right. Maybe we made a whole bunch of people angry, and yeah, they DDoSed everything, right?
Oh boy.
Yeah. So all right. So going into the next part of all this stuff too, let's actually check some of these viewer questions here out real quick. We actually don't have any in regards to progression, I don't think. So we'll go back into that later. We have a couple other stuff for Paladins, Dark Knights, and Generals, and some of these other topics we're talking about. So we'll come back to the questions here. Actually, we have one main tank question that kind of jumped up here from Rewrite Time. Are there any situations that tanks can get away with provoking without an aggro combo? Is there a reason a tank would want to provoke with a delirium, or instead something instead of an aggro combo? I don't think there is, really, unless if you're using a ninja.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of.
This is a pretty troll question.
Yeah, it seems pretty troll.
It's because someone in my FC decided to evoke with Delirium one time.
Oh, okay. So now
and
we get it
constantly
now.
lost aggro.
Okay.
I thought maybe someone out there was just really that ignorant about how provoking works. Okay. Good.
I think the only thing you can provoke with outside of an aggro combo, or you should, is probably Fell Cleave.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, I guess you could. Yeah. There's no reason not to. That's pretty dumb. All right. There you go. You got your troll question in. Let's go to the next part of it. We'll get into optimizing DPS, and again, we're talking about optimizing DPS because that's what, besides reducing damage in a fight, right? The other thing you can do, and this is what every job, every class, whether you're healer, no matter tank, whatever, once you're at that point to where you're preventing the damage, you're healing up, and you're doing the mechanics properly, the next level you can do is optimize your DPS, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so when we're comparing Dark Knight DPS and Paladin DPS, Dark Knights always win?
Yes. Unless the Dark Knight is absolutely clueless on how to use his kit, then yes.
Okay. All right. So unless if the Dark Knight's completely clueless, Miyuki, would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, Dark Knight. I mean, a Paladin falls pretty behind.
All right. Is there any way, like, have you guys ever done like an off-tank versus off-tank comparison? Like, and again, bad term, right? But if we had the Paladin only doing DPS the entire time and had the Dark Knight only doing DPS in their DPS stance, kind of how does that work out? Does Paladin still fall short?
Yeah, by about like 100, 150 over a long fight. And even more in terms of raid DPS if you need TP, because even just on a dummy fight, a Paladin runs out of TP in like 240, 245. And needing your support to play TP or needing every single goat in the fight, it's terrible. Like, I don't know why they did that for Paladin, but
Right.
Especially with the itemization this tier, there's a lot of skill speed.
Yeah, a lot of skill speed. I think I had a 2.39 GCD, I think.
Yeah, like I think it's at the point where you almost clip Glowing Blade early at like 4 seconds instead of less than 3.
Okay. So always Dark Knight. There's not even a comp situation or like even a thought of like, oh, if you bring a Paladin, somehow that's going to increase your DPS. There's like no way that it works out to where Paladin will overcome Dark Knight with DPS.
If we're talking about when everything is already optimized and mechanics aren't a problem, then yes, there's no way.
Okay. If things are not optimized, though.
I wanted to try something in A5 with cover on the Chimera, actually. I think maybe might net more raid DPS, but who knows?
Yeah, but when things aren't optimized and healer DPS becomes like it gets into the question, I still think Paladin's better if your Paladin is good, but that's up for debate, and it's really up to the player ability more than it is a straightforward answer.
Okay, I got you. So it's really just player skill. There's not enough difference in there to like say, oh well, Dark Knights are always going to come out on top, or Paladin's always going to come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I still think even if you're playing completely safe in prog and both tanks stay in tank stance the entire fight, Dark Knights will still win. So I don't know.
Okay, all right. So when we get back into DPS and talking about Paladins in general, and stance dancing, Cupcake, how often do you stance dance as a Paladin? Like all the time, or do you always just barely ever switch off?
It really depends on the fight. In A5, I would stance dance into sword whenever the boss went small. Because there's just no reason to be in shield oath for that at all. There's like the biggest damage that comes out during those phases are shock therapies, and like if I'm dying, it kind of means the raid is also dying because that just means there's no heal going on because it's usually AoE healing. If I don't, if the fight somehow turns into like a recovery mode where someone like we're about to wipe, we recover from it, I'll be in shield oath, especially if I don't have my usual mapped cooldowns ready. In A7, I'm just never in shield oath except for the first 4 GCDs, and A8. I said it earlier. I don't know when to go sword oath in A8 except for the first onslaughter phase and during brute justice in between short long needle stacks. It really does just go down to whether or not you feel like you can survive without it. But I don't like doing that to my healers, so I don't know.
Okay. So basically, there's no real good time to stance. You just you switch on or you switch off almost the entire fight, except for maybe 1 or 2 points in the fight.
Yeah, especially because it costs a GCD just to switch for Paladin, both on and off. It sucks, but I know some groups have found ways to just stay in sword off the whole time. I just don't want to bother learning how to do that because it requires healers loving you, and I don't know if my healers loved me at the time, so it's fine.
Fair enough. So you can't really stance with Paladin. It's not really a thing.
There are times where I can't remember the math behind it, but there is a certain amount of GCDs that make it worth losing 2 GCDs to go back off and then on tank stance, but I just don't think it's I don't think it's worth it sometimes. Sometimes it's just clearly worth it. Like in A7, since most damage is just Uplander Doom on the tanks and the rest are AoE things, then it's very obvious that you can just map your cooldowns correctly and stay in sword oath the entire fight. But in fights like A8 where it's super random based on some bot mechanics or random crits or random tank busters from holding 2 bots or just things like that, then I'd rather just play it safe.
I want to set this is completely off topic, but I want to set some sort of device under your chair that when you move it generates electricity. And then I could just harness all the power of you swiveling back and forth.
Ew. I'm nervous, man.
I'm just making fun of you. Miyuki, what do you think, man? And is there any stance dancing that makes sense to you as a paladin, or should they pretty much just go one way or the other?
I don't
know.
do the same strat as Cupcake and A8 for Paladin.
Okay.
Because we learned it differently. So there's a lot more room for me to stance because I'm often tanking less than the warrior, and depending on the brawler mechanics during the bot phase, it opens up bigger cooldowns for me to use during brute justice to allow me to tank and sword off more.
Okay, so you actually do some dancing in a. Do you think that outputs a lot more DPS, or is it pretty minor in the end?
It's probably at least in that phase, maybe a good 75 to 100, depending on how good you are.
Well, I mean, in the overall scheme of the fight, when you end off on the end of the fight. Because that's what matters the most, right?
Yeah.
Well, I do realize when I'm playing safer, we push, the second intermission, there's a chance Brute Justice can jump before the short needles come out. And if I'm dancing, that happens more often than when I'm just playing it extra safe.
Okay. All right, so it's just a little bit of extra damage to push.
Yeah.
Is it a lot of work to keep going in and out of that stance, or is it pretty minimal just because it's a global cooldown, it's pretty smooth, you hit it, and you just go?
It's just a GCD.
Yeah.
So you're not even looking at that much more work, it's just doing it, basically, right?
Yeah.
Cupcake, you're falling short, man. You're not optimizing the most DPS that you can in your group, man.
Well, it's my healers did so much DPS that I didn't know if it was worth them losing DPS for me to gain 50 or so.
Well, I mean, that's another point to actually go into all this too. Do you feel like there's a balance that you're looking at to where your mitigation and being in Sword Oath versus Shield Oath actually helps increase your healer's damage more than how much damage you would go if you switched over into Sword Oath?
Yes. That is absolutely why I like playing Paladin, is because they have the ability to increase healer DPS inherently, at least in Prague, purely because they just take less damage. Okay. They can take less damage. I know it really doesn't really speak to Paladin as completely, but in my earlier logs, just in Prague, when we've got our first 1 or 2 clears for each fight, my scholar was always just top 95% percentile. Granted, there weren't many people. Yeah, it was phased. Granted, there weren't many people playing or beating the fights at that time, and even my white mage was like 85th percentile white mage healing our raid, and I always attributed it to the lower damage taken as a whole. Less damage taken just means more healer DPS. It makes sense to me. So I don't know.
Okay, Miyuki, will you kind of agree with that? That like tanks preventing damage in the end will help overall DPS, or what?
I do agree with it, but it also depends on your group dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not talking about optimizing for speed kills, then like let's say some healers just like healing more and they don't feel as comfortable going to cleric as much, then maybe it's beneficial to have your tanks play a little more greedy to output that extra DPS if your healers don't feel comfortable doing it.
All right, so if you're complementing the play styles of your healers.
I think that's the whole group, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that makes sense. And so it's really whatever. What if the healers and the tanks want to push like full like crazy damage? Like they want to push out the most as possible. Should you be preventing more damage, or should you just like by going into that tank stance? That's what I'm talking about. I mean, cooldowns and everything. Of course, I think tanks should use their cooldowns on cooldown, except for like when it's required, right? You have like if you're going through and you know you can blow a vengeance before any real damage matters, then blow to vengeance, and then blow to vengeance when it matters too. But right, or am I?
No, you're right.
Okay, but besides that, going in and being in a sword oath or shield oath, and everyone's pushing as hard as they can, does going in shield oath ever allow your healers to do more damage, or does it not matter if you have your healers good enough? It doesn't matter anyways.
Well, if we're talking about both roles trying to optimize their DPS, I would assume that they're at a point where they're pushing for like speed runs or parse runs or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Then by then I would assume that the healers and the tanks have found a way to circumvent having to go through a tank stance, whether it be through a combination of healer or tank cooldowns used in conjunction. Plus, going into tank stance is just a DPS loss overall, so I don't think it'd be used for that for speed kills. Right. Yeah, but
for progression.
In Prague, I definitely would. Like, I would always pop Shield Oath for the 6-stack Uplander Dooms. Especially because the second one, during a second Cat's phase, your second healer might not always be in range to heal you. Mm-hmm. It just helps. Granted, I'd have like 6 other cooldowns running, just the way that I mapped cooldowns. Yeah, I had every other cooldown running except for Sentinel. So I was just a brick, just walking brick thing, and so there's no way.
Your playstyle is actually pretty defensive then, Cupcake, right? Or?
Initially it is, because I don't like making... I mean, maybe I should do this more. I don't know. Like, I don't like making healers feel like they can't drop a GCD without me dying. Okay. I'm not saying that other high DPS tanks will die if your healer is forced to drop a GCD, but I just don't like feeling. I don't like my healers feeling insecure about whether or not I will live. So I just do whatever I can, whether it be through proper cooldown mapping or just working with them to find out what they think I can do better or what I need to do better. And yeah, it's just that's just how I play initially, and then I get greedy as hell sometimes later, but not during prod.
All right, Miyuki, I feel like we're asking this question again for you, but I wanted to hear a little bit more from you on it too. Do you think for prog versus farming that it's more beneficial for overall DPS output to have a tank actually mitigate as fully as they can on tank busters?
Yeah, for sure. Like the first thing I do in prog, for prog I usually keep my tank stance on, and I'll take it off as I know more about the fight and as I'm at my cooldowns.
Okay, I gotcha. Because my rule of thumb, and people don't agree with me a lot on it, is that I always think everyone has to learn the mechanics, and if you're not hitting Enrage, then we didn't learn the mechanics. something's off there. If we're dying to other things, if if you're not going through the fight 100%, not dying and everything else, we haven't hit that point to where everyone needs to be 100% optimizing everything. They can try. They could find, oh yeah, now I know this. I'm getting more familiar with this first phase. How do I optimize and do most DPS in this first phase? And they can just keep doing that. But in the end, people need to hit Enrage before they really know that they're doing the fight correctly. But then again, you have the whole stance. You have 7 really good players that can push mechanics immediately. And they don't even have to worry about the mechanics. But when you're dealing with people who are not 100% optimal, people who are learning their classes, learning their jobs, learning the fights and everything else, I always think mechanics, not dying, then optimizing DPS. If you can do mechanics and you cannot die, then you can optimize your DPS.
Yes, I agree with that. Most of prog is about building fundamental habits that are conducive to success. And if you're never actually building habits to the end of the fight, then your chances of success are lower. A really cool, I say cool now, I hated it at the beginning, but I saw the merits of it after we did it. A strat that Goka of EM did during our prog this tier for both Sephiroth and A6 when we had troubles learning to the last phase is just a DPS dry run. You just sheathe the entire fight, and the only people doing anything are tanks and healers for hate and keeping alive, as out of necessity. Mm-hmm. And you force DPS to do absolutely nothing until they can master the mechanic. Because half the time, DPS are dying to mechanics because they're too busy tunneling on the rotation or trying to hit a positional or being overall stupid when a mechanic is coming up, and that just needs to stop. And if everyone is doing it and they're not pressured to do anything at all, then it just makes it so much easier to learn, right? Like, especially because these fights are scripted. For like A7, for example, right? It doesn't matter where the fuck you are in percentage on the boss, the mechanics will happen, regardless of what you do, right? You can be at 100% and you'll go to your cat phase. You can be 100% and you'll go to merry-go-round. And if you need to learn the mechanic, I would just do the dry run. But that requires a lot of selfless play and patience. Not a lot of people want to do that. Okay. But that's just me. I don't know. I really liked it because we were able to clear like Ceph that same day after seeing the last phase once or twice, and we cleared A6 maybe the day after doing a dry run on Vortexer once or twice. It worked out really well for us, so I think it's cool. But. Okay.
So both of you guys, and I'll ask you again, Miyuki, when you guys on your first kills, like your first 1 to 2 kills, 3 kills, how defensive were you guys as tanks? Like, how much did you use your tank stance? Miyuki?
In A5, I had my tank stance on when he was big and off when it was small. Okay. In A6, I think I played a bit safer and I was in tank stance for most of it. A7 was kind of a DPS wall for us in the beginning, so I actually tanked that entirely and sort of. Okay. And A8, I played it pretty safe, and I was in tank stance pretty much every time, all the times I was tanking.
All right. And Cupcake, were you kind of the same way?
Yeah, in A5, tank stance until he was small. A6. A6 was weird because you could swap tanks based on what cooldowns were up, and you had a big enough break between Brawler and Swindler because of the Orbs phase that basically all your cooldowns were up again for Swindler. Plus, most people just use their invuln there anyway. But for the most part, it's just whenever I knew big damage was coming out, I would go into tank stance. If I knew it was just auto attacks and AoEs, then I would go into Sword Oath. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm just asking this because, I mean, in your first clears, and this is, you guys are talking about, like, really, like, what kind of gear levels were you guys at that point? You're pretty low gear levels, right?
220.
220? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And so now for groups going at 240, let's not say 240, let's say 235 to 239, right? Would you recommend that they go around the same way, or should they go... Are they at a point to where it doesn't matter? Gear's pretty much there. Everyone should just do no tank stance at all going throughout the entire fight.
If you're learning the fight, definitely not.
Okay.
because it helps your healers and your tanks learn the mechanics better if there's less incoming damage.
Agreed. There's like, if it's prog, there's no reason to push deep. Okay, that's not true. Unless it's absolutely required, pushing DPS should be your last priority.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clear that up. I have a whole group of people trolling me constantly right now. A static that completely believes that I'm being a complete asshole. And I just want to make sure. It doesn't matter to me. I just want your guys' opinion. You could totally disagree with me and call me stupid, whatever you want to do. By the way, guys, if you guys disagree with each other or me, voice it immediately.
No.
Let me know.
Yeah, like, I agree with most that's been said, and anything that I didn't really agree with, I said. So I don't know. Right now, though, I purely believe that if you're learning, or if you're not at a 100% clear rate when you're being safe, there's no reason not to be safe.
Okay.
Like, it's dumb. It's a waste of time. I don't know.
All right. Like if you're spending an entire raid night on one fight.
I know how that goes.
Yeah, I've been dealing with
Yeah.
that for a while. I mean, I consider that still progression if you're still spending the entire raid night on one fight almost, right?
Yeah.
Like 3 hours, 5 hours, on just one fight the entire night. Something's going wrong. You still need to figure out the fight.
Yeah, like my alt group is all on their 7th plus kill. Some of them on like their 20th kill for A7, and we spent like 3 nights on it. I don't understand.
Really? 3 nights?
Yeah, it was really bad. Last week we didn't even get to, because I'm helping a group prog through A8, and it took like 2.5 days just to get to A8, and then we didn't have time to do anything. So it was so stupid. Oh my god, it
What
made me
was
so
killing you
angry.
guys?
Damage and like, people getting hit by balls, or people getting hit by steering wind, or the heart getting eaten every damn time. I don't know.
That's A7
So-
for you, man.
It's fucking annoying, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Let's move on a little bit more about optimizing DPS, just so we can kind of get that out there. A lot of people had questions about paladins in general. The next question that they had about paladins is, how do you get the most out of your flight or flight? FOF. Fight or flight, right? Or is it flight or fight?
Fight or flight. Fight or flight. You want to use it when your GCD is about to come up, not like right after using one. 2, you want to get 2 circle of scorns, maybe a pot if you have it up. You'll have it only for one of the fight or flights, but you can fit 2 circle of scorns within your fight or flight. 3, you always get 10 GCDs if you use it when delayed, like kind of the way that you would treat Berserk, but you can get 10 GCDs into it. And you usually want to use it before your 3rd hit of a combo, but I could be wrong. And in some fights, you want to clip your Goring Blade if you have to with fight or flight on, just because it's technically your highest potency, and reapplying it. Like I think the biggest example I can think of is A7. If you're pulling as a paladin, you obviously start with Alone, and your second combo is going to be Goring Blade with fight or flight up and your pot. And then you want to clip it again while your fight or flight is still up and your Goring Blade's like at 10 or 11 seconds, because reapplying it anytime after is when the boss jumps and it's just worthless. But the general rule is you just want 2 circle of scorns with your pot and you get 9 or 10 GCDs in it. There's really nothing else special to it.
Okay. Miyuki, do you have anything to add to that, or does that sound about right?
The only thing I would probably add is that I think circle scorn, it depends on how long you have to wait for it to get to.
Oh.
Because if you wait too long, you're going to lose a cast over the fight, and it's definitely not worth it.
Yeah, like your second fight or flight comes up 10 seconds after your 10 or 15 seconds before your circle of scorn comes up. Still fight dependent, but most of the time you don't want to be holding onto your fight or flight for too long if it means you get 1 less fight or flight or 1 less circle of scorn in the fight. But that's just details, I think. Generally, it's just the general rules I said earlier. But
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Miyuki, I'll let you answer this. Then, going straight towards the Dark Knight, what's the best way? What's some tips you can give some people to make sure that they're optimizing DPS? Some things that you see people failing on constantly that they need to improve upon.
I think the biggest thing is to always use Scourge and Salted Earth. A lot of people forget that.
The Scourge is like a 500 potency attack, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Salted Earth is over 500 too.
That's ridiculous.
Other than that, just watch your MP bar. If you see Dark Passenger coming up, make sure you have MP for that. If you see Carven Spit coming up, make sure you have MP for that.
Okay. I guess going in, how hard is it to manage MP as a Dark Knight? Is there a set rotation, or is it like goofy sometimes?
It's a pretty simple rule. If you have the MP to Dark Arts Soul Eater, if you don't use Delirium. If you're not comfortable with the current amount of MP you have, just use Delirium. Don't force that extra Soul Eater.
Yeah, there's
Go ahead.
There's like a when I was learning Dark Knight, there's a 3-part priority thing. Is you want to make sure you have mana for Dark Arts, Carve and Spit, and then you want to make sure you have mana for Dark Passenger before you have mana for Dark Arts Soul Eater, because it's still a higher potency, and then Dark Arts Soul Eater is last, and then after that it's just Delirium.
Yeah. So talking about Soul Survivor real quick with Dark Knight, apparently, is that something that you guys find really hard to remember to use, or is that... I actually, one of the questions was, how do I best remember to use Soul Survivor? Do you guys have any answers for that?
Repetition, really.
Yeah.
You force yourself to know when to use it in that fight, and eventually you'll just always remember it.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's about to die and you don't have full mana, just fucking use it, really. I mean, unless there's I can't think of any fight where you would want it specifically at any specific time, but really it's just, if it's about to die and you don't have full mana, then use it. There's no reason not to.
Okay. All right. So I guess that's pretty much all the questions for optimizing DPS that I see listed here at the moment. So we're actually going to jump into going into job-specific stuff, and I want to start off first with Paladin here, where we're just going to hit some of the common questions and issues people have with Paladins. The first one isn't really a rating question; it's more of like doing dungeon speed runs and things like that in general. Cupcake, again, you love Paladin, right? All right. So, do you run dungeons in Paladin to do it quickly, or
yes?
No? Yeah,
sometimes. You do? Not well. It depends on your word. Quickly is kind of weird, but
okay.
It's obviously not going to be as fast as actually that's not necessarily true. It depends on the player, but
okay. How do you do a speed run with how do you optimize running a dungeon on a Paladin and go as quickly as possible?
Fucking sprint and flash, man.
Just
Not even kidding. Sprint and flash, circle of score and everything, and then rotate Goring Blade when you have enough hate on every mob. And then if you know that the biggest pull is coming up, use your hollow. Don't be afraid to don't be using hollow for bosses. There's just no fucking reason to do that. But yeah, get the biggest pull, flash everything, hollowed. Actually pay attention to blinds on flash, because blind is very useful in dungeons, and just Goring Blade everything, because really you can rely on server TP ticks to keep up Goring Blade combos on everything, and that's really all you can really do other than keep circle score on as many enemies as possible. But usually if you're using all your cooldowns on the trash, you can have your healer, say hollowed will give your healer 5, 6, 7 GCDs before they actually have to heal you, especially if you combine it with Sentinel after or something, and it usually makes up for the amount of DPS that maybe not for warrior, because because overpower is stupid. But
yeah, overpower is pretty ridiculous, right?
Yeah, but it can at least make it comparable to Dark Knight. Warrior is just stupid. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about warrior. But
Screw warrior. All right.
Yeah.
So when we're talking,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say for bosses you generally don't even need to heal, but
as a paladin.
In dungeons, yeah, there's you don't really need to heal for anything. If you really need to heal, just heal yourself, right? And then usually a regen or a pet heal or something is enough to keep you alive for the entire boss fights, unless you eat mechanics, in which case that's your fault. But
okay, I gotcha. Don't mess up mechanics, guys. Number 1. All right. So I have a quick question about Flash. When I was running Paladin back in the day, I thought blind was amazing for dungeons and speedruns. It just made sense. Blind was great. But the thing is, when you spam it, you kill that. You kill the most effect you can get out of it, right? Because you blind, then you want to blind probably right when it's about to run out, so you get that full half diminishing return. Then again, right? And so is there an efficient way to keep up that blind as well when you're doing dungeons, or you just say screw it, I don't care, I'm just gonna flash away?
Usually 1 or 2 blinds initially is enough to hold hate until the blind duration is lower than the second cast, so of your flash or second application of blind. But I mean, that's just, I don't really I can't ever really, like, I'm not gonna lie and say that I use flash 100% effectively. I don't know. It's just, it's flash. Who cares, right? But,
You don't care,
but like,
whatever.
I at the very least, like 15 to 20 seconds of blind on anything is still strong. Like, I'm not gonna go for the max thing. I use it when I know I'm about to lose hate. Otherwise, I am just Goring Blade everything or single target and midi comboing something that might have escaped because of like a flare or something, right? But generally, it's just it's good for paladins just using flash whenever, and I don't really like keeping the maximum amount of blind time. Just seems kind of, I wouldn't say useless because it wouldn't be useless, but it just seems so annoying. I don't want to have to do that. Like,
Gotcha.
it's too much overhead for such a little game.
Yeah, for a little dungeon, right?
Yeah.
All right. Miyuki, you'd probably not prefer Paladin if you're trying to do a dungeon and go really quick, right? Or what do you run
I
with?
would definitely prefer Warrior.
Okay, I gotcha. Then I'm going to direct this next question just to you. We already talked about Paladin or TP issues right now. I mean, is there any way that, does it need to be fixed right now, or is TP in a pretty okay spot?
I think. Sorry, you first. Sorry, I know it's for me.
It's for Miyuki,
definitely-
Cupcake.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Come
definitely
on.
needs to be fixed.
Okay. So it's still not fixed?
Especially- Yeah. Especially for fights like A7 where you have to stun at times. Like 120 TP, I think it is now.
Yeah.
That's just gone.
Go ahead, Cupcake.
I disagree with, not that Paladin needs a TP fix, but I think TP consumption and TP gain needs to be readjusted so that support DPS actually needs to support.
Okay, so you think that it should be an issue and that all jobs should kind of have their ways of issues, and we should have utilities to fix those issues instead of
Yes.
making those utilities completely useless. For example, TP songs and stuff like that, and TP cards.
Yes, I can tell you 100% fact that a lot of DPS that relied on what's that one damn skill? The one that gives TP back. I can't remember.
Song.
No. The Dragoon cross class.
Oh,
What is it
Invigorate,
called?
is that right?
Invigorate,
Yeah.
yes. A lot of DPS dropped needing to use Invigorate at optimal times to last your entire fight, purely because you don't need to pay attention to that as much anymore. Unless you're a monk or a paladin, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to pay attention to that crap anymore. You don't need TP song anymore. You don't need to promote your turret. You don't need optimal goad after the 7th GCD of a ninja on a bard in T13 anymore. That kind of shit you don't really need anymore. And it's just, it kills the entire point of being a support DPS, other than, do you have battle voice for my for my raging strikes,
Right.
or do you have trick attack for my, well, not trick attack, well, yeah, trick attack is kind of
Hypercharge.
yeah, like kind of shit like that, right? Like, you don't pay attention to that anymore, and it sucks. I know
Promotion, yeah.
like range DPS who love doing DPS are gonna fight me on that, or at least fight the opinion, but it's just the truth. And I feel like the buffs that were given to range DPS would warrant some kind of DPS hit in terms of needing to actually support your raid.
So you think there should be the fourth role of support in raids?
Yeah, I mean, if there wasn't, then they're just remove the fucking TP bar, right?
Yeah.
Like what's the point? If you're never gonna run out of TP, why even gauge it? If you're never gonna run out of, like, the only thing that's ever needed for a support DPS now is like mana, and that's if someone dies and you need to res like 7 times. And even then, if you're an Astro, you still never run out of mana because Astros are,
Or a scholar?
a Scholar too. They can dissipate energy drain if they really needed to,
Yeah.
right? But like, even then, the use of that is very limited, right? Of Ballad, and it's just, I don't know. I don't like it, but
Just out of pure opinion, Miyuki, do you agree with that, or you want Cupcake to shut up?
Sorry.
I'm biased because I actually kind of main Bard and Machinist too.
Oh, okay.
And
He
I don't
plays
like
it.
playing songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just they buffed a lot of things. Like they made songs played within a GCD or within 1.5 seconds, whatever, and they lowered the amount of damage penalty that you take by playing a song, or all that stuff. But when are songs actually ever really needed, except for in emergencies, right? Like it shouldn't be that way. I feel like it should be part of their role, but
Okay.
it's just not right now.
Fair enough. I mean, right now, healers are required to resurrect people on A8 and A4, right? It's a mechanic. You have to swift cast res people.
Oh Jesus, please.
We could talk about that a little bit if you want, but
No.
no. All right. So Paladin has a lot of different utilities. They have a lot of situational things. Or this is what the statement is saying. It's saying, hey, Paladins have lots of situational abilities. Do you feel like some of them are useless and need to be removed or altered in some way?
I don't think any of their skills are useless at all, really. I think some of them could be adjusted.
Like what?
Like Clemency being fucking interruptible, Clemency breaking combo. That's the most stupid thing ever. It's like, hey, I need
the biggest thing.
I need an emergency heal, but I'm in a combo. Fuck you, you're dead.
Swift cast, man. Right?
God,
No.
like
Sure
I don't
cast. Let's just make them cross class with Black Mage, man.
Oh God, yeah, Swift cast Clemency would be pretty cool, actually. I mean, it would be better than like, I don't know, but anyway, it's just
that's been actually since like it's came out, since Clemency was a thing in 3.0, people have complained about that exact same thing because it seems like a useless ability if it can be interrupted like that, especially in emergency situations. You have to calculate it for it to actually be
it needs to be planned. Like the only thing I can think of the only thing I could think from this tier that I ever actually planned on using Clemency was the bomb explosion after the double stack sizzle beam in A7. If you had this is really dumb. If you had a stone skin on yourself and you were casting Clemency to perfectly time for the bomb explosion, the stone skin would block enough damage that you were definitely not going to be interrupted to Clemency the person who had the sizzle spark or sizzle beam damage, which is really stupid. And it's like the amount of planning that had to go to that is just probably not even worth it. And the person probably wouldn't have died anyway, but I did it just for the safety.
Right.
Otherwise, like
I actually did that too.
Yeah, like
I was like, oh my God, Clemency is useful.
Yeah,
not really, but
one time, and then like one time I was just like, oh shit, I got interrupted. Oh, you're dead. My bad for calling that I had a heal out for you because apparently the game doesn't want me to heal you. But otherwise, things just need to be adjusted to actually be useful in a raid setting.
Okay. So Clemency is like the big thing, right? I mean, and that was actually one of the questions: is Clemency good? Do you guys think Clemency is a good ability, or does it suck because of the interruption?
I think it's fucking amazing, but only if it actually goes off when you want it to.
Okay.
It's got a lot of raw power, but it's not very reliable.
Okay.
And the thing about it is the healing is only going to go up on it. It's attack power based, so I mean, the more gear Paladin gets, the harder that thing's going to heal, and it's also a self heal, which a lot of people ignore. But for now, as long as it remains interruptible, it's just too unreliable.
Okay. So the other Paladin question here, to keep going down the Reddit list of questions, is that Paladin is considered the boring job to play. Do you think Paladin is boring and it's just not an interesting job to play?
If like in terms of like button pressing, yeah, it's pretty fucking boring.
Okay.
But I found it fun because of the things that you can plan ahead of and just executing them. Like a lot of our strategies revolved around Paladin mechanics, like Hummelfaust cheesing. You could just cover for the second stack of cleaves and never have to tank swap, and everyone can stay in attack stance. In A6, you could, like I said, you could cover the single drill. You could cover the stack that the Vortexer gives. You could cover. I don't know why you would, but you could. You could use Veil once every fight if you knew when to use it. Divine Veil. There's a lot of things you could plan out, and for that I found it fun. But yeah, in terms of just trying to do DPS and doing your normal combo, like what Miyuki said earlier, you only have two combos you actually want to use. Alone was just like, oh no, I'm losing hate, I better use it kind of thing. But even then, Royal Authority combo gave you hate anyway, so I don't know.
So, in essence, you're not really calling it boring. You just enjoy what a paladin can do and the other things that you can do with it, and you care a little bit less about button rotation and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, playing Dark Knight and then switching back to Paladin, it felt like the game was like 2 times slower or something.
Oh, really?
Because as a Dark Knight, you're like constantly double weaving. You always have something to do unless you screwed up your mana in between GCDs almost. Except for like maybe 10 seconds when you're Dark Passenger or Plunge or Low Blow or something, or off cooldown or on cooldown rather. You always have something to do in between GCDs, and you're constantly active and managing something. Paladin is actually the 1-2-3, 1-2-4 class, and it's kind of like
you wish there was some proc or something else that you had to manage with it.
Yeah, the only proc I get is now apparently on a 15-second cooldown based on a block, so it's just like, eh.
All right. Well, I mean, it feels like Paladin's actually a really good job if you're focusing on the fight in general and trying to acknowledge everything that's going on. It's a little bit more of an aware job because of that fact too, though, right? I mean, when I play Machinist, I'm lucky if my eyes get off the bar, the hot bar, right? I'm looking for procs, I'm looking for everything else. But with a Paladin, you can kind of get in that mode to where you're paying more attention about what's going on in a fight. And so, honestly, a Paladin can be a really good, quote-unquote, raid leader. They just call stuff out during a fight and makes things happen, right? Or no?
Yeah, I thought so. When I don't call things out on my current raid, nor did I with Tempest when I was raided with Balana and them. But all the raids that I was a Paladin for before that, I acted as at least the person calling during the raids, and it was very helpful to not have such a complex rotation and not have to manage so many things. It doesn't make it any more fun in terms of actually playing the job, but it made it more fun for me knowing that I was almost always aware of everything going on in the arena.
Okay. Miyuki, we had a lot of discussion here about it. You want to throw in your thoughts about what do you think about Paladin and playing it, if it's too boring in comparison to Dark Knight?
I do agree that the combos are a little boring. What I find fun about Paladin is like abusing hollowed ground and cover, like Cupcake said, and actually just trying to prove people wrong about Paladin DPS being not as good, but it's hard.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. You need to play like perfect and get crazy crits and hope that you end the fight right after a Rage of Hollowners. I'm not Rage of
The
Hollowners.
DPS skill level is like way higher than it would be on like a Dark Knight or a Warrior.
I don't think so.
No, it's actually lower. It's just you want it to end at an optimal time.
You just want it to end at that time so you can claim it's better.
Yeah, it's like fight or flight right as it ends, and you get your Royal Authority crit, and then just kill it. Just, please, thank you.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that too. Like at the very end of a fight, like if you end right when all your cooldowns in, you're doing more DPS. It looks like you're doing more DPS than other people because you had the most optimal timing for the entire fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of how it is. Doesn't mean that you are generating more DPS overall. It's just that you ended at a good point then.
Yeah. I mean, some are clear cut. They just did better than I did, but others are just like, yeah, he ended perfectly or had some kind of crazy luck. I don't know. Like the 100% carbon spit crit rate or something. That's crazy, but it's happened. So I don't know.
Okay. All right, so we're going to jump into Dark Knight, and I'll aim these questions a little bit more towards you, Miyuki, if you're cool with that.
Sure.
Because it's kind of turning out to where Miyuki's more of the Dark Knight representative, and Cupcake's more of the Paladin representative at the moment.
Yeah, I haven't really played Dark Knight as much since Gordius. But even then, when it came to, like as I said in the beginning, before we started, there was always 2, maybe 3 Dark Knights I could never even bother competing with, and that was always Miyuki and Box. So I didn't even bother.
Gotcha. You hear that, Miyuki? You're discouraging people from playing Dark Knight because they're doing too good, man.
No. Discouraging them from trying to be number 1. That's different.
Oh, okay. All right. So first question for you in regards to Dark Knight is how do you keep Living Dead optimal? What's the best method to actually heal Living Dead and get the most use out of it? I mean, we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Is it really just using Benediction at that last second when it's up, or is there more to it?
I think so, because it opens up both your healers to just keep DPSing throughout the entire cooldown.
Should you use Living Dead like when, say, for example, a Uplander Doom's coming, right? And that's just the first, because I've been dealing with it a lot recently. Should you use it, like have full health, and then before he even starts casting it, have Living Dead on? Like, is there a way that you...
Definitely not.
Okay. So there's no way to really time that to where, like, you get the full, like, use out of it?
Well, if you're planning to use... I guess most people use Living Dead during the first jail transition to the cat phase.
Mm-hmm.
So if we talk about that, most healers will just stop healing completely when it gets closer to the 75% mark. Mm-hmm. And depending on your current HP levels, you can kind of make a judgment call on when to pop it. Because popping it, there's actually times where I've popped it too early and it never goes off, and that's pretty bad.
Right. Because you lose that 10 seconds.
Yeah, and it's a lot of healing too.
Or he just dies.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, I guess with that is most healers, like I know I've done this before, as soon as I see Living Dead go off, heal the hell out of him, make sure that he gets healed up as quickly as possible, because I'm afraid that if I don't do it quick enough, he's going to die, because that's what happens. You just die if it doesn't work. And so what if you're not using Benediction, and say a Scholar is healing you to full, what's the best way to like make sure you get the most out of Living Dead, having a Scholar heal you all the way back up?
I think Cupcake should answer this question.
Sure.
The Scholar. Lustrates, E-Tactic, Adlo, Physic, something. Usually
Okay.
E-Tactic, Adlo, Lustrate should be enough.
Okay.
And then you make sure your pet's embracing the right target. That's
Okay.
like 1.7 to 2.3 depending on your gear on your pet, plus like a 4.2 Physic, plus like a 6k Lustrate. And if you really need the Adlo, it's like a 4.4 heal unless it crits, in which case you don't have to do anything else. But yeah, that's it should be enough. It's usually like two or three GCDs, usually just two. But
Okay. So it's not too bad, but I mean you have to start healing pretty much as soon as Living Dead goes off.
no, maybe like 4 seconds left. If you
Okay.
do E-Tactic, Adlo, Lustrate, and then an Embrace is usually enough. Usually.
What if you don't crit? Still
Even
enough?
without the crit, it's
Okay.
like it should be enough.
I gotcha.
Unless your other healer just doesn't want to help you, or if it's a solo heal, then maybe 2 Lustrates. But yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, so I guess that's my biggest gripe about Dark Knights in general is healing them through Living Dead is such it's way more complicated. It's not that much more complicated, but it's in terms of difficulty, it's completely different than Home Gang and Hallowed Ground, because you know exactly what you need to do during Home Gang and Hallowed Ground. Hallowed Ground, you do nothing, you just DPS, right? Home Gang, you wait a couple seconds and you try to heal up full. Or you just let him take the hit, and then you heal him up full. It doesn't matter. It's just there to cushion that hit, right? Living Dead, you have to kind of plan how you're doing it, because you don't want to heal them before they actually hit 0.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I feel like it's goofy. Do you guys feel like that needs to be reworked, or is it perfectly fine and it's unique in its own way? Miyuki, I'll let you answer first.
I think it's fine. When I first heard about Living Dead, I thought it was pretty stupid that was the case, that you pretty much couldn't or you had to time it. But after using it throughout the fights, I've seen its usefulness.
Okay. All right. Well, then good. It's not as bad as I thought. I'm just scared of it as a healer when I see it, because I have to
I think you're scared of it as a Scholar.
as a Scholar, because
As
I'm trying
a
to think,
white-
like, what do I do here? White Mage can easily get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a white mage, or I don't know
It
what comp
depends.
you
Some
run?
nights I have White Mage, some nights I have Astro. It depends on what Kerr wants to try out that night.
Generally, the Scholar doesn't have to do much except for maybe a
Well, I mean,
Legendary
like when
if-
we're talking about when the Scholars, the White Mage or Astros across the room because of fire, right? well, Astro in general, White Mage could probably sneak in real quick and do a Benediction, sneak out, but
There might be better alternatives to that
Yeah.
than the Pop Living Dead.
Or
Okay.
even if you need your healer to run to the opposite side of the arena, they have enough time to top off before needing to run, even with Searing Wind. I think you can heal, assuming that it procs by like the third or fourth stack, you can heal up to full with what do you call it? With Living Dead or Walking Dead at about 7 seconds in, so 3 seconds left, and still have enough time to run to the other side. Just stay on the spikes and make sure your sprint is up, and then you'll still make it.
all right. So Scholar actually, well, if he dies, it's because of the other healer.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Good. Just making sure I got that down. All right.
You can also be nice and leave your pet next to the square where your raid is
Right.
standing. If you need to go to the side, and you should be fine.
All right. So, well, another question in regards to Dark Knight is going into the play style of Dark Knights in general. A lot of people find Dark Knight is actually really awkward and weird to play. Miyuki, do you feel that's the same? Like, do you feel like a Dark Knight's kind of weird to play sometimes? Just within its rotation?
Not at all. I think the biggest thing would be that sometimes grit just sticks when you're trying to drop it, but if you play it, it's pretty smooth.
Okay. So is that really the biggest thing? Is that grit just being kind of goofy sometimes because it works as a global cooldown, but it's not really a global cooldown when you take it off?
Yeah.
Would you guys change that, or would you say that that's unique to Dark Knight and that's just part of being a Dark Knight?
I would change. You go ahead. You first. Sorry.
The game design would have to change because that happens with a lot of off GCDs like Flaming Arrow and Salted Earth. Like they're not queuable, so it's more Flaming Arrow. So if you try to use it in the middle of your GCD, it's kind of rough.
Yeah, off GCD, ground AoEs, and stances don't queue off. It's just annoying. I don't know why they would allow them to queue on but not queue off, but whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that just requires a system change.
Right. Well, I mean, in terms of like, warriors, they can do it in off global cooldowns. They can do it between actions, right? And then you have paladins where it's just part of your GCD rotation. Grit, it like clips the GCD rotation, like at the very beginning of it. And then you can go in your normal thing. Is that not like funky and weird, or that seems perfectly fine to you guys? Do you know what I mean, or am I?
Yeah, no,
okay.
I know what you mean. It's weird when you first do it. After a while, you just kind of just like whatever. It's whatever.
Okay.
It's just annoying, but it's yeah.
Okay. Miyuki, just whatever.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about Dark Knight is like a lot of people that I've talked to, they find it a bit weird to play at first, but as you play it more, it becomes a lot smoother.
I gotcha. All right. Well, good. Done with that. How do you plan your OGCDs as a Dark Knight? What's the best way to optimize those? Like, if I play a Machinist, I know exactly how my rotation's going every single time when I come up with things, how I want things to work out. When you're playing Dark Knight, do you have that set rotation that you can always just kind of drone into?
Not really. Like, maybe in the beginning of your fight, your GCDs and off GCDs will be the same, but there's always the stun low blow resets that happen that would change your off GCDs a little.
Okay.
And I think I spoke about it earlier, but pretty much watch your mana for Dark Passenger and Carven Spit because losing time on those is pretty big.
So is that really the biggest things with OGCDs, is just making sure that your mana can manage it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's fights where you would want to save your stun, so you would want to watch out for that.
Yeah, or like other short OGCD holding when it's worth it. Like A5, you can get a triple target Dark Passenger if you hold it for the alarms the first set of alarms. Oh, it's not A5, A1. Same with A5. I don't know the timing for A5 for the snakes, but I'm pretty sure you'd want to hold it for that too.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, and then you usually want to, because Carbon Spit's on a 60-second cooldown, it usually will always happen when the trick attack is about to come or is up. You want to use it for that. You want to use Reprisal. I don't know. I never actually knew how to use Reprisal optimally. I just used it whenever I had it. It's probably not the most way to use it, or best way to use it, but yeah, you want to use Reprisal. Sometimes you don't want to use Plunge if you need to move, like in A3. If you knew you were going to get knocked back from the stupid hand, you'd want to hold it for that. But yeah.
Oh yeah, the plunge thing is pretty good.
Yeah.
For Reprisal, I tend to use it whenever it's up. If I notice that it's on off cooldown and like there's a big hit coming and I see Dark Dance off cooldown, I'll pop Dark Dance to try to force that Reprisal. Like it's pretty helpful for J kicks and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
That last J Storm, it's a godsend.
All right. So the other thing is when you're playing Dark Knight kind of defensively versus offensively, a lot of people complain that Paladin and Dark Knight defensively is pretty much the same job. Do you guys feel the same way? I mean, it just plays the same way. People complain about being too boring. Offensively, they think Dark Knight's a lot of fun, but defensively, they feel like it's just boring and simple rotation.
I'll let you start off. I need to think about this a bit.
Well, I think that if SE were to make defensively more fun, then that would raise the skill cap on the tanks a lot. And like, I think Sheltron is the best example of this because in A3 Savage, I was able to avoid all the auto attacks before the cleaves and managed to Sheltron every cleave. But obviously, that's not possible for everyone. So that would be something that's fun about Paladin that obviously has a very high skill cap.
Right. The Sheltron usage?
I don't know if they would actually. Yeah.
I mean, with the exception of Shadowskin and Rampart, I don't think they are the same at all, really, right? I mean, they both have their 20%. Shadow Wall is 30, Bulwark, Sentinel is 40. Bulwark is on a 180-second cooldown with blocks, but procs pretty much like every fucking auto attack. Dark Dance is 60-second RNG parry, and then Sheltron is every 30 seconds, and Dark Mind is every 60. So it's not the same at all. I don't know why they would think that. I mean, maybe in numbers they seem kind of similar, or at least in essence they seem very similar, but...
What about rotation in general?
No, I think Dark Knight can get away with a ton more shit because of Dark Mind, especially with the Magic Busters, but... coming from a healer perspective, whenever I heal a Paladin versus healing a Dark Knight, I just feel like Paladins take way less damage. I don't know if it's biased, but or it might actually be true. Even regardless if it's a magic fight or magic heavy fight or a physical heavy fight, but it might just be because of the extra 10% from Sentinel or something. I don't know, but I don't think it's the same at all.
Okay. All right. So then, Miyuki, you don't think that it's kind of hand in hand going back and forth between the two jobs? Like a lot of people compare Astros and White Mages, you go back and forth. They're pretty much the same thing. You don't think that's the same thing with Paladin and Dark Knight?
I mean, Rampart, Shadowskin, Sentinel, and Shadow Wall are basically they fulfill the same role. The major differences is just the Dark Mind and Sheltron.
Okay.
So that's what I think they're pretty much the same.
Oh, you think they're the same? So
Yeah.
Cupcake's like, no.
Well, I mean,
One fulfills one role of tanking magic damage better, and one fulfills the physical role better.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, like I said, in numbers and in essence, they're the same. Like, you want to use Dark Mind when the big magic thing is coming for 15% or 30% if you Dark Arts it. For Sheltron, if you're really good at timing on non-casted physical busters, you want to use Sheltron. But I don't know. I don't feel like they don't feel the same, even though they might actually systematically be the same. I don't think they are, and they're are, I don't know how to
I
explain
think what
them.
he's talking about is that the way you plan out fights is differently between the two
Yeah,
tanks.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Like I think that was in response to talking about a rotation. I don't think they aren't necessarily the same. I mean, if it's something like Upland or Doom A7 where it's very timed and planned, then sure, you'll definitely end up with the same things because they're the same cooldowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the exception being Dark Dance. You'll have Dark Dance 3 times more as often, and you need to use Bulwark more effectively and whatnot. But I just don't think you definitely don't plan fights the same way other than when in cases like that. That's
Okay.
probably why I don't think they're the same. But yeah.
All right. So the next question we have in here is actually talking about skill speed builds as a Dark Knight. Does that even make sense at all, Miyuki? Do Dark Knights have any kind of use of doing a skill speed build?
Well, let's just say tank itemization is very linear.
Mm-hmm.
There's pretty much only so many paths you can go that avoid parry, so
Right. So pretty much no, doesn't make any sense. Like you can't push extra DPS, you can't do anything fancy with a skill speed build.
well, skill speed does help because you get mana slightly faster,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't itemize for it personally.
You wouldn't
Yeah.
try to force it out, all right?
No, I wouldn't like try to get skill speed on every piece.
Like
Okay.
I've never done the math, but the amount of skill speed that you would theoretically need to get an extra full GCD into your what the fuck is that skill called? Blood weapon?
Yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah, you would need so much skill speed. It's not even worth it. Like absolutely not. And with parry being fucking god awful right now, it's so useless. Like I
Right.
mean, the only time you want it is when reprisals off cooldown. And otherwise, it's just like, hey, I parried. I'm lucky, right? Like
Yeah.
cool. Like
In
otherwise,
Warriors' case, they get
oh
guaranteed parry.
yeah, that's true. Unless
Yeah.
it's Upland or Doom, but yeah.
Okay. The last question aimed purely at Dark Knight in this list here is, do you guys feel like Paladin is way more, I guess they have more utilities than Dark Knight in general? Like, would you bring a Paladin if you want to just have more utilities overall in a fight? Or are they pretty much the same level?
I don't think it's more about. I think Paladin has more defensive utility, but again, it really depends on raid comp.
Okay.
The utility that a Dark Knight would bring with the intelligence down is obviously negated by DK with a monk,
Right.
but you don't want a monk anyway, so it's just like
You don't want a monk anyways? Oh, okay.
At least for speed kills, you don't right now anyway.
Right.
So I don't know. And then Divine Veil only has so much use until you're used to the damage, and it's not like you can plan a fight around Divine Veil. It's just like a nice thing to have, you know?
Yeah, it's helpful, but not needed.
Yeah. And cover, you can do strat specific stuff, but that only goes so far once you're into the optimizing phase. And yeah. So
Okay.
it definitely has its use in Prague. Right now, when everyone's BIS, well, maybe not everyone, but at least people are moving towards BIS and doing speed kills, it's just like, oh well, Paladin kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. Miyuki, are you jealous of any of the Paladin utility when you're running Dark Knight, or are you like, doesn't really matter?
I don't really notice a difference.
Okay. There you go. Answer that. All right, I'm gonna cautiously go to these viewer questions. Hold on, give me a second.
Oh boy.
We'll try to go over some of these, and these are talking about Paladins and Dark Knights in general. Malfestit wanted to know. Actually, no. Malfestit, I think we answered your clemency question. I think we got that. We definitely went over clemency a good bit today. So we'll skip that for right now. All right, this is from QTP Ham. Question from Uniki. How do you feel about Sheltron for single buster on Brawler and A6S?
I don't know why people would ever do that.
I feel like you have some trolls that kind of follows you in here, man.
Yeah.
They're following the cookies. That's what it is, man.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Manifesto, you have another question here about Paladins. I know it won't affect raids too much, but is there anyone in the world who doesn't want Paladin AoE? Like, I guess that question would go in regards, do you guys feel like Paladins need better AoE?
They just need it. One AoE, like that isn't off GCD 25-second thing. Like they don't have anything. I feel bad for them, but
What if they got like a trait that added in like, I don't know, spikes or something to their flashes, so when they did a flash it shot out spikes and then you did some potency with it? Or is that too similar to everything else that Dark Knight and Warrior are doing?
I mean it's already traded with blind, so I mean
Yeah, you'd have to get rid of blind.
I mean, at this point, if they added that, I don't think it would matter because paladins just need to do damage while, like, in the dungeon.
yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, so let's jump over to Dark Knight real quick. Skylo Rolo, I can't say your name. Skylar.
It's
Just call him
Skylar with
Skylar?
a face.
Skylar with a face. Oh, that's a face.
Yeah, the
Oh.
OWO, yeah.
I didn't know that. I guess that's a face. Miyuki, do you personally think it's better to save off GCDs like Salt It and Crave and Spit until you drop Grit after you pull and use it during Grit? I don't know if you understood that at all.
Do you hold your OGCDs for off grit?
It's very, very fight specific.
It just depends on the fight.
Yeah, let's say for example, if my Carven Spit was up in the beginning of Brute Justice, if I use it at the very beginning, it'll be up again before the first intermission. So if I'm in grid at that point, then so be it, because I get another one later. But otherwise, let's say I'm pulling Brawler in A6, I'll usually do one Power Slash and Grit without using any off GCDs, and then Scourge after I drop Grit.
Okay. So, sorry. Best opener for Dark Knight planning the drop Grit? Is that pretty much what does that fall in exactly to what you just said?
I would think it would if
Okay.
like just listening to his answer, it would still be fight specific.
Okay, still fights. All right. Because that was the next question from Malfested. All right. So let's go into this next one from Jammer Sidewinder. How often could a Paladin be using Clemency to heal in a fight, or would it be too much DPS loss for them for extra healer DPS to make up for it?
If a healer can handle a heal, a tank should never have to heal. But there are times where, if you're very comfortable with what damage goes out in a fight, you'll find that there will be one or two people that need to be prioritized for a heal, but the healer is strapped, maybe healing for a raid or healing something else that needs to happen, and it would just essentially come down to a clutch heal. Otherwise, healing yourself or others shouldn't be necessary. It's usually only when you're trying to catch up.
Okay, so it's just really emergency situations. It's a loss otherwise.
Yes.
Okay.
Or during downtime.
Yeah, during downtime, like intermission 1, for example, or 2. Am I starting to lag again? I hope I don't perma-smile again.
No, you're good. Perma-smile's not that bad. It's okay.
Oh, it seems to be yours, actually, because your stream is hitching on Twitch. But
oh, is it? Is it like going back and forth?
And you're roboting a bit right now.
I'm roboting to you guys?
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
let's
but
give it
you're
a second.
Robot-y.
All right, hold on. Let's see if it fixes itself. I can restart the call real quick.
I don't know if it's the call because it's giving me the spinny load thing on Twitch as well, but it seems to be better now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, if I'm giving you guys a robot voice, it's something on my end, I would think.
Yeah, but it seems to be connection-wide, so it would still affect your stream. I don't know if it would be worth it right now.
Okay. Do you guys hear me okay now, or am I still robot-y?
Half robot-y.
Half robot-y? All right. So let's restart the call real quick, just to be safe.
Okay.
So hold on 1 second here. Hello?
Hello?
All right, let's see if that works out.
It did work actually.
Yeah, it sounds better. Usually, like after you start to call again, it gets better again.
Yeah, it seems better now.
All right. Yeah, all right, so you guys can hear me perfectly fine right now.
It's starting to go down again. Kind
All
of.
right. Is it still going down again?
A bit, yeah.
Oh, boy. Let's give it a second. Well, I mean, like, I don't know. And so I'm going to sit here and we're going to sit here and just BS for a bit while we wait for it to kind of get better.
That's cool.
And everybody can just let me know when it gets better, I guess, in chat. But I mean, that's weird. I mean, but the only reason I think that it could be something on my end is simply because, like, if you guys start to hear my voice quality go down, that's nothing to do with Twitch.
Yeah, I'm only saying this because I've had the stream open at the same time.
Okay.
And it started.
But my connection could be making Twitch mess up too.
It could.
Yeah.
It seems to be better now.
Seems to be better now.
And your voice quality just went up again. So yeah,
All
it
right.
seems to be stable-ish now.
All right, let's give it a second here, and then we'll get back into it, and we'll start asking the rest of these questions here.
Sure.
Oh, well, that's painful, but it is what it is. Okay, all right, everyone's kind of saying that looks better right now. So let's go ahead and go into the next question of Dark Knight. Hydromancer wants to know to skip using tank stance after initial pull without killing yourself on aggro combos with Dark Knight. Is Ninja using their tools required? I mean, in any case, Ninja should always be using their tools to help out with Imity, right?
Yes.
No matter what?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do you agree with that, Miyuki? Miyuki?
Whoa.
Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Ninja aggro tools are really strong.
Yeah. I mean, there's no situation to where a ninja shouldn't be using it. I mean, it's just part of their utility.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, already saying it went down again?
No, it looks fine.
Okay. It looks fine on you. All right. We'll keep going then. Vito had a question. When is it good to use Bulwark? I can do it one day. Are there any CD combos it's actually really good with?
God, it's also very fight dependent. It depends. Like for things like, I'll go through this by fight for this current here. For A5, I use Bulwark on the firsts. I don't want to be pulling A5 anyway, but regardless, that's a different conversation. But
Okay.
if I pull A5 as Paladin, I pop Bulwark for the first set of gob jabs, yes, because there is just no reason not to mitigate there. It helps with hate if you get a shield swipe proc without having to use your Sheltron. You usually don't need to heal there anyway, like a regen and the initial shields that you have are enough. And it allows you to use it again for the second big phase, assuming that you're skipping the first boost. So it's just a mapping thing. It comes up at about 3 minutes, and then most groups are killing it around 5 minutes, so you get to use it twice in the fight. I usually use it in conjunction with other non-percent mitigation based things like Foresight. You can use it with Convalescence because it's not a very reliable thing, but that's where I'm using it now. In A6, I just use it anytime I'm tanking a physical damage dealing boss. So it's usually my group actually had me pulling Blaster. I know that's not very popular for a Paladin, but I pulled Blaster and Vortexer, and using them there were just obvious. There's no reason not to because they're physical damage and there's no other time to use them.
Right.
A7, I used Bulwark whenever I had awareness up. So that's 2 out of 3 times you'll have awareness with Bulwark. And it's purely because a lot of the damage coming from Uplander Doom is crit based. And if you have awareness running, it will eliminate the crit roll, and then you will roll on to blocks, which is already really high with Bulwark because it's just inherently high for a Paladin. And it saves you your Rampart and Sentinel for the Uplander Dooms that you don't have awareness, so that the crits that do hit you aren't ridiculous 12k crits or something, and they usually have more stacks. But if there aren't any physical tank busters, I would just use them on auto attacks leading up to the magic buster, so that you always, like, I think the biggest examples that I can think of would be A1 or T13 or I think those are the biggest fights I can think of. Because, like, for example, in T13, you could use Bulwark after the first Mega Flare stack, and it would block pretty much every auto attack leading up to the first flatten, in which you wouldn't want to rely on RNG anyway. But it's very fight specific, again, and it's very mechanic specific. But you essentially want to use it in a time where it'll block the most damage. And you want to use cooldowns in conjunction with it to complement the cooldown mapping that you want to use to mitigate the most efficiently. But it really does depend on the speed of that your group is pushing, because sometimes you just don't get it another time and you just want to use it anyway, just so you can use it.
That's a pretty healthy answer there.
Yeah, although I actually map out cooldowns more than I even care about my DPS in prog, just because I remember when I first joined Elysium as a Dark Knight, there was this really cool timeline for A4 in which one of the tanks, I believe it was Ganga, it was Goka's old Dark Knight, who he mapped out the entire fight, and I don't know if he mapped it out, but he did map his cooldowns against that timeline and the damage that was going out. And I found that to be very helpful when learning what cooldowns can be used and where. And then I adjusted that method of mapping to better fit what I felt was needed for my healers to succeed and for my raid to succeed. And then that's just how I do it for me. I know a lot of tanks don't usually go into that much depth, but damn,
I mean, how hard is it to do that?
It's very hard.
Is it really? I don't think
because you actually need to see the entire fight before you can map out a fight completely.
Okay, so let's talk in terms of someone's already cleared the fight, right? Yeah. And so you can go back and look at what's happening, and you understand. You have guides that say this attack's coming here, this attack's coming here. These are the seconds it's coming at. You can pretty much map out your cooldowns that way, though, can't you?
Yeah, but in prog, when you don't know what's coming up next,
okay, like
you might need a cooldown, and you just actually do need stupid amount of heals from one point of the fight, then you can, and you just can't afford to use the cooldown that you would need. Then it just comes down to remembering that when moving forward. But that goes for every cooldown, not just Bulwark. It should go down for every cooldown. I don't think tanks need to go into that much depth and detail when timing out cooldowns, but cooldowns for tanks should have the same amount of planning as offensive buffs for DPS. Just because good mitigation is more raid DPS, at least indirectly. So, I mean, that's just kind of how I approach tanking and all my cooldowns.
Okay. I mean, when I first got into tanking, and Miyuki, I'm going to ask you to just weigh in here in a bit, because I haven't heard your voice in a while. But I know you're there. You're there, right, Miyuki?
All right.
Okay. So, like, when I was doing tanking way back when I first started playing the game, at some point I saw all these abilities just sitting there. And I knew exactly what cooldowns I needed for tank busters. But I had all these other little things that I could be using throughout the fight. And so at that point, I was like, will this be back up by the time I need it? If it will, then I'm using it. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like almost every person should probably, if you're a tank or if you're a healer or if you're a DPS, mapping that stuff out just makes sense. Even if it's not 100% necessary, you might as well maximize your job, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the learning process of tanking. Obviously, when you're just starting, you just want to know when the big hits are coming. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So,
and like when to use your important cooldowns. But as you get more comfortable with tanking in general, you'll notice that you can maybe use this cooldown here and you'll have it when you really need it as well. Or for certain fights, you pop cooldowns early. Even though you don't fully maximize the cooldown, you'll get some of it so that it's up when you need it too.
I mean, like, I guess one of the hardest parts is, like, when you're doing that stuff in, like, A7 where the phases are different each time. Like, you have two options to phases, so you kind of have to plan out two different ways to do your cooldown, sort of, right? Because like there could be a situation, well, at least with doing virus on certain things as a scholar, I don't know how much this applies for tanking because I didn't tank at all within this entire expansion. But like you kind of have to work with that kind of stuff, and that's the only time I see it being an issue. Trying to plan out at the very beginning, I use my cooldowns here. Then at this point, I use my cooldowns and just keep going through until I have like almost 100% usage. Do you see any negativity in doing that? Like, do you think someone who jumps into tanking, first getting into tanking, planning out their cooldowns for every fight, are they going to lose anything by doing that?
I think you're lagging out again.
Am I lagging out again?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, boy. Do you hear robot voice?
To give my response.
That's all right. I'm recording it at least, right? And so the record is there's no lag on the record.
Okay.
Man, that's unfortunate, but whatever. So you want to wait on that, you said, Miyuki? Or do you want to go ahead and just run with it? Okay.
Wait, well, if the stream is up, I can keep going, but I'm not sure right now.
Yeah. Stream is up for some people, not up for everybody.
Your voice seems to be getting better in terms of quality again, so I think it's okay now.
Okay. Run with it, Miyuki.
Kind of.
Okay. We'll just run with it right now. Miyuki, go ahead and just run with it.
Zeno typed something in the chat that I want to elaborate on, that cooldown usage or cooldown mapping is an evolutionary process. Mm-hmm. Like what Cupcake's find is really good for progression because like the kill times are usually static because of your gear. But I think as you do the fight more, like you kill things faster, like your cooldown usage has to change because sometimes a certain cooldown won't be up when you need it. Again, simply because you're pushing phases faster. So like in AA, like I've been changing my cooldowns around on Dark Knight like almost every week to try to maximize mitigation and my damage at the same time. So that's definitely important too.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll jump off that. We've been on that for quite a while. The only other thing, and we can answer it really quickly, is Zeno was also asking if you guys had to change Bulwark in any way. I know you went off for like 5-10 minutes on Bulwark, but if you had to change it in any way, what's the way that you would do that, Cupcake?
I don't know if this is fair, like a good thing though, because of it. I think it would be fair because it's RNG for one, and it's 10 seconds and it's a 3-minute cooldown. So they can either increase its defensive efficiency by lowering the damn cooldown, because I think 3 minutes is stupid. Like why can you parry at essentially this almost the same rate as a Dark Knight every minute, but you can't do it as a fucking dude who has a shield the entire fucking fight, right? But it would either be lowering the cooldown to increase defensive capability, or keeping the cooldown the same but allowing for infinite shield swipe procs while it's active, because again it's not that much. I mean it'll be a good burst of potency gain, but it's not enough to break a fight, for example. Plus I still think it's stupid they put shield swipe on a 15-second cooldown, but whatever. That's like, why would you give someone so much block and not let them use it other than stand there and make it uninteractable? Like such bad. It's like, oh god, it's such a bad design.
Nice.
To just like so much invisible power is so boring. Like I don't know.
Miyuki, what's your thoughts on it, man?
I think 3 minutes is way too long for not even a guaranteed block.
Yeah.
And like it's so close to being a guaranteed block, why not just make it a guaranteed block? Because I know there's definitely times in T13 where I've died because Bulwark didn't proc.
Oh, man. We're going to still run through it with all this, or we might spend like the next hour just kind of sitting here waiting for the stream to fix itself, and then we'll have it back up on a VOD at some point if somebody missed something. So I think that's probably the best thing at the moment.
It seems good right now, so it'll be okay.
Okay. All right, so going in, and this is kind of one of the last sections I actually might want to hit. I might hit some of the other questions we have here because there's a lot of questions to run in. Then we got the troll section, which might take a second, which I want to hit. But if someone's actually trying to become a better Dark Knight, a better Paladin. They're like, I want to play Dark Knight. I want to play Paladin. Warriors for egotistical chumps. I hate it. How do they go about getting the right resources to make sure that they are doing the proper stuff for Dark Knight and Paladin?
I'll let Miyuki go first.
Okay.
I think either watch someone's streams to see how they're mapping their cooldowns or FF logs used correctly. You can see where they're taking damage and where they're popping their cooldowns. It's really helpful if people use it the right way.
Okay. Yeah, I think the only thing with like FF logs and new players, they have no clue how to use FF logs. Most new players will have no clue about how to get the full usage out of FF logs. They'll see numbers and they'll think, how do I achieve these numbers? And then they become idiots to tanking. And they have no clue what a cooldown is. They just know what all the DPS stuff
Damage
is. Right?
should come secondary, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I always think damage should come secondary, no matter what. I mean, it should be what happens when you're hitting Enrage, because I want to just kill the fight, right? I just want to kill the thing. I don't if we're dying to mechanics, we're I don't want to mindlessly sit here in front of a computer and maximize all of my damage to where I'm not even seeing a fight anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fun. The speed kills are fun to try for and everything. But if we're just trying to kill the fight, I'd rather people learn the fight, clear it, and then go on past that. If you don't have it on farm, there's no reason to sit. If you don't have it to where you're, I don't know, killing it within a night, then you shouldn't be doing any kind of that stuff. But
yeah, I agree. And I know it's said a lot, but you do 0 DPS when you're dead. And that's generally what happens when you fail a mechanic. So do the fucking mechanic and then you'll be doing DPS. Like, I don't know. Yeah. But, let's see, first time tank question. I don't know. If anything, it's just they need to prioritize. No, that's going to sound stupid if I finish that sentence. They need to work out their priorities correctly. It's always going to be threat, safety, mitigation, and then damage. And then they just need to learn the generals of them, like, and just read their tooltips. And that's, I mean, it's really hard to teach someone how to tank. They just kind of have to dive into it and see what's hard and then figure out what they can do to fix it, I guess. There really is no other way to do it than just to do it, because it's
and I mean, like, and I'm an idiot, and most people will think that I'm a complete idiot for the way that I think with progression and just doing content in this game. And I guess that's because of the level that I'm doing content at. The way that I think about it is, I know that tanks and DPS, or tanks and healers, can optimize and they can push more, and they can always strive to do more with their job by doing more DPS and pushing their limits and everything else. But I also think that if you can clear content as a tank doing like okay DPS and doing good DPS, but like also maximizing the amount that you reduce in damage, you're still a good tank to me. I still want you in my group because you're doing mechanics and you're helping me do what I can to keep everyone else alive too. And that healers, in turn, they should do damage. They should do something, right? I feel like you should never be standing still. That's the other thing, is that you should always be trying to find ways to do gaps. The only reason you stand still is if you're lost in the fight. You're confused. You're like, where am I? How do I make sure that I don't die? How do I make sure I do the mechanics? If you get to that point of confusion and being lost, you should sit there, reassess what you need to do, then go back and start doing everything you can optimal. But otherwise, you shouldn't be standing still. And I do that sometimes, too, when I'm healing. Cupcake, I don't know if you've ever had that issue. Like when you're healing and then you're like, I kind of feel like I need to reassess what's going on here and what do I need to focus on.
Yeah, I know what you mean by standing still and trying to reassess, except it starts to get to a point where when you're comfortable healing, you can reassess the situation and know what to do to fix things within a split second. But in prog and for newer players for every role, I agree. Like there should never be a time where you're sitting on a GCD unless it's absolutely required.
Yeah, because you could always you can say, all right, I have 2.5 seconds. I'm going to cast real quick to look around and see what's going on. And with healing, you could be facing any direction at all. A heal's going to go off. So in most situations, you can always be doing something while you're reassessing the situation. But don't kill yourself if you feel like you have to stop for a second. Just try not to. All right. Then we're going back into healing. This is not the healing show. We're in tank show. I'm trying to get myself out of that. So you guys said, hey, follow people who are streaming, basically. Miyuki, follow people who are streaming, right? Are there guides out there that people can go for Paladin and Dark Knight that's are updated guides right now?
God. I just have a vendetta against guides, so...
You have a vendetta?
Yeah, like, okay, maybe not a vendetta. I don't really like guides except for teaching optimal openers. Because... Or not maybe openers, but like rotations. That's cool. But telling someone how to play the game forces the community to think that one way is correct. Or, like, at least in the general public will think that the way to play one thing is correct and not doing it that way means you're an idiot. And it's not always the right... Like, the biggest thing I can think of, and... this isn't to hate him because I like he's like a really good friend of mine. I'm cool with him, his girlfriend, whatever.
You're cool with his girlfriend, okay?
No, I mean like just to say that like I was at one point very close to like them as a whole, but yeah, like his initial clear guides, right? They're great for if you want a reference, but they should never be followed to the T ever. Like especially because what works for him, what worked for Team K-pop, what works for Elysium, what works for whoever, will not always work for yourself. And if you're not multifaceted in terms of your mindset and being adaptive to strategy, you're gonna fail. Like I didn't like, for example, when I said I learned how to map cooldowns from Ganga, I thought his cooldowns rotation was not very great, so I changed it. But the fact that I learned it from him doesn't make him a bad person, make him a better or worse player. It doesn't make me a better player because I thought something was better for me, right? This is why I don't really like guides. But anyway, Paladin guide, I don't know. Who the hell wants to write a guide about a Paladin, right? Like, it's really straightforward. You 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5.
You say that, but I don't think it is. I don't think it is this straightforward. I feel like there's certain things that people just need to know to understand a job. Like, there's so many misconceptions, especially with the way that Square Enix labels some of their moves. Like,
yeah.
There's some things that should be cleared up.
Their verbiage is very inconsistent. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know any guides. I wouldn't even follow my own guide if I had one because there are so many things I probably do terribly, but they just work for me. But if you needed to reference anyone, I still say Miyuki or Vox for Dark Knight. I watched Perez's stream, I think, once or twice in A8, and I thought he was a fucking god too. For Dark Knight again, but not many people play Paladin. I think Raffler was playing it for Angered. He was pretty good. He was running with one of my friends for a bit. I don't know if they have guides though. That's the only problem. But at least for references, they can go to them. For Warrior, obviously Xeno is a figurehead for that right now. Layla for Prog Warrior for damn sure. I don't think there's anyone better for a Prog Warrior. Even in terms of just math and DPS, he taught me how to fucking play A4 Warrior while I was streaming through my chat. Like,
I remember that.
Yeah, dude's a god.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Dark Knights, I'm pretty sure Mew knows more Dark Knights other than the two that I've mentioned, since I don't really know many others.
I think there is a guide for Dark Knight on the official forums. I think it has Talcarus openers that he posted on Reddit and like the brief like priority system for Dark Knight. But I think the problem with when people ask like how do I play Dark Knight is like they don't understand. A lot of it is your thought process that goes into the fights. So you should have to think for you have to try to think for yourself, and what you can learn from like maybe someone that's better than you is why they would do this in this specific moment. Things like that.
Okay. And so do you feel like it's lacking right now, or should there just not be anything put out there?
I mean, like sometimes I get questions like how do I play Dark Knight? It's the same with DPS, like how do I play Bard, how do I play Machinist, things like that. Like you can't really teach someone how to play, but you can like kind of give your thought process behind things, like why I pop my cooldowns here instead of like elsewhere.
Okay.
or how I go about optimizing each fight.
Why don't you make a guide, Miyuki? Why don't you make a guide? What's holding
boy.
you back from it? You just don't want to. You don't feel like you could invest in time in doing it, or what? People look up to you, man.
If I would make a guide, it would probably be next tier, because if I were to make a guide, I would probably go through all the fights and my thought process behind every fight. And it's so close to the next tier that I don't think it would be worth it.
Okay. Going into 3.4, you clear all the content. Would you do that? Come on, Miyu.
I'll try.
Okay. All right, I'm just messing with you.
Good safe answer.
All right. Okay, so that kind of gives us a good idea about improving, where you can go. I mean, mostly right now it's just watching other players. There's not a lot of like really solid guides. There's some guides and references that you can use, like Miyuki. I can't. I'm trying to stop tripping over it. Miyuki has, like he said about Dark Knight, and Cupcake. You just don't think people should look up guides at all for Paladins. They should just.
I don't think, other than learning learning the generals of like, this is how you hold hate, this is what potency is, this is how you use provoke, right? Shit like that. And use this cooldown when you're about to take a fuckload of damage, right? That thing, sure, why not? That's a cool. At least you don't have to reference things you might not have even unlocked yet in game, right? If you're a new player. But when it comes to fight specific, I don't think anyone should ever really use a fight specific guide to the T. They should definitely read it if they really want to know what's coming and what to expect, but they should never rely on what someone else is telling them to do, or else they will never grow as a player.
Right.
Yeah, if they want to grow as a player, they should always think about why someone is doing that instead of just following it blindly.
Okay. All right. So I'm actually going to dive into a little bit more trolley questions here for a second. So real quick, the question here first is from, let's see, who should I pick? Actually, you know what? I do have one question from Klops, Mr. Layla, that I feel like we owe that as a question. Have you guys ever used Unleash proc from Unmin in a Savage encounter?
Fuck no.
No?
Maybe if it was like A6. No, not A6, A2.
A5, A5. You pick up the snake when no one really knows how to do it. And you get that Unleash proc, free AoE.
A2. Because if you didn't want to walk all the way to something, you would unmend it. And then you wanted to pad some numbers or something, or grab more things around you, Unleash. Otherwise, that shit is so useless. In raid, it's useless. Okay. In dungeons, it's great, but...
All right. So, next question then. I'm going to save this one for the last one. Okay. We already kind of went over how you guys feel about ninjas who don't do threat control, so we don't got to worry about that. You guys hate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Paladin Cecil versus Dark Knight Cecil. Who would you bring to fight Zeromus and why?
Assuming it's one of the older versions and you could only use the crystal as a paladin, obviously you have to go as a paladin because you just wouldn't clear the fight. You'd wipe.
Okay.
Because you needed to use this crystal to bring it into some true form thing before you could kill it. But
okay,
otherwise, I don't know. I'd still say paladin because I'm biased as shit.
Okay.
And it's been a while since I played that game and actually tried doing things with it, so...
Miyuki?
I haven't actually played FF4, so I don't know.
Oh, no. We'll go to the next question before anyone remembers you said that. All right. Okay. Oh, this is from Ghost. What do you use to style your hair?
Me?
Cupcake.
I use a high shine pomade lately. If not, then I just have regular hair gel and hairspray, and then I use heat styling to keep it up. Yeah, it takes a lot of time, man. But for right now, I actually did wake up this way and just didn't do anything because I woke up at like noon and I didn't have time to really do anything before that. So
I woke up at noon too, man. Come on. What are you talking about? All right. So let's go to some actual chat questions here. Goka, question from Miyuki. What will it take to liberate you from the chains of Lalafels? Come on.
For someone to satisfy Nagu's cookie hunger.
Okay. If someone could do that, then sure, right?
Yeah.
All right. Bun has a question for Cupcake. Why are you a god and can I worship your cute Lala?
You can worship my Lala if you want, I suppose. I'm not a god, though. I actually think I'm very, very average. I know it's not fair to say to people who do look up to me, but it's just like, it's one because I've never really gotten to stick to a main job for more than a tier ever since Heavensward came out, and two, it's just like I'm never really the top of the top. I can make top 10, sure, in terms of DPS, but I don't think DPS is much of a metric, and I think I can do a lot of things better, but I just suck. So, yeah, there are a lot of things I can do better, but I'm still learning. So,
Okay, all right, fair enough. It's serious. Could you ask Miyuki what the recommended number of phone chargers to bring for progression? What is the recommended number? 3?
Yeah.
All right, so go into detail. Why is it 3?
Well, there was one poll where something stupid happened, and I got up out of my chair to get something to eat, and I happened to knock over my phone charger, and it broke. So they attributed that to rage, and it's kind of an inside joke now that I like to break phone chargers.
Oh, okay. You need to calm down, man. You see, this entire show, you've been really aggressive. I have to let you know. You just need to chill out, man. I know all that salted earth's kind of building up in you. Okay, that was a good joke, right? Okay, so here's another question from Lipton Ice, who's been begging for this question. He wants to know, it's from Reddit as well. What's your opinion on using cover as a leash in BDSM ERP? I'd like to hear an experienced tank's opinion on this.
I don't ERP.
Cupcake?
I'm sorry, but I have heard. Let me see if I can find this somewhere in TeamSpeak because someone saw this on Reddit. The real dream is when you can make a cover octagon while ERPing like an 8-way leash. That wasn't me. I don't do
it, guys.
I'm not into BDSM or ERP, but this is what I've heard as just as a reference for yeah.
Miyuki? Thoughts?
I mean, I don't see why someone would want to use that for BDSM. It only lasts 12 seconds. Kind of useless.
Yeah, it doesn't really do much for you, right? It's just like real quick. All right. So what else we got? We got another question here. Should Lalas be allowed to tank? Miyuki, I'll let you answer this one.
Oh my god.
Not when they use reprisal as their only cooldown.
Okay.
Yo, have you seen my Lala tank drawn by Nagu? Oh my god, let me find this real quick.
So Nagu, is she the one who drew your picture, Miyuki, or was that someone else?
Yeah.
All right, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, she's
really talented.
She's a god.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Did she just draw it out of boredom, or were you like, please do this, or did you give her like $1,000, or like?
Mine was a birthday gift.
Oh, that's sweet.
Can
you find it?
Yeah.
If you find it, post it in the chat.
Okay.
I can't see that, man.
Oh, you're right. No links allowed. I just got banned for 10 seconds.
Oh, snap. You got wrecked. Hold on. Let me do it. All right, I'm going to be honest. I think I kind of do that on purpose. Every single guest, I'm like, link it in chat, and I don't permit them beforehand.
It is identical to the previous one I sent 30 seconds ago. Yeah, right. All right. Hold on.
All right. You can do it. Hurry up. You only got 3 minutes, man.
I have to wait 30 seconds.
You have to wait 30 seconds? No, you should be good.
No, it gave me your message was not sent because it is identical to the previous one you sent less than 30 seconds ago. There you go.
There you
That
go.
should work.
Oh,
It was-
that's really good.
Yeah, I was a fucking beautiful Lala tank.
That
Just with the
kinda-
cupcake corgi on top, man.
your birthday present doesn't look as good anymore.
Well, mine was a paid commission, but yeah, it
Oh,
is.
okay. I gotcha. All right, so that's pretty much all of the questions we have here. Are there any questions in this list that we didn't go over that you feel like we should go over?
You mean on the viewer questions or just all of them?
In the question list, like not the viewer questions, but the questions in the layout.
No, I think they're fine.
Okay.
Um,
Any vital ones that you're just like, I can't believe we didn't hit this?
no, viewer questions are the only ones remaining. It seems that
All right, let's hit the viewer question. What viewer question do you wanna see?
I don't know. I just see a lot of them that haven't been asked, so that's why I was.
Okay, well, let's go in here. Let's knock them out. Viewer questions. We got there's not that many. We got Aaron. What's your opinion on the other two tanks lacking a way to apply slashing? Miyuki, let's have Miyuki answer this. Quiet Miyuki over here.
I think that this is a hard question.
Alright.
I don't really care that much.
You don't care that much
because
at
I
all?
always run with a warrior. Like, it's one less thing for me to have to worry about.
All right. Cupcake.
I think that warriors should not be able to apply slashing, and that ninjas should apply slashing just as monks need to apply debuff for blunt
Okay.
damage, and
Dragoon's piercing.
dragoons for piercing, and balance ninja accordingly to that. And warriors can have Storm's Eye buffed in potency to make up for the lack of the slashing debuff, to make up for that combo specific potency loss.
Okay.
And that should be their DPS combo as opposed to Butcher's Block spamming. And that would solve the need for a warrior in every raid. I don't. Well, that would also make Ninja very exclusive to raiding too, so it's kind of a trade-off.
I mean, like Ninja Warrior and like Dark Knight Monk kind of have those same kind of little deals. I think Dark Knight Monk's a little bit more valuable though, right?
Yeah, but if tanks are really afraid, I wouldn't say afraid, but if they really don't want to lose damage, they should adjust numbers so that it's not dependent on a debuff, because then it would make the roster of jobs less dependent on each other. And sure, there would be complements if you had them in combo, but it would make it so it's it would kill needing a specific jobs per raid. Okay. And I did say, for everyone who's like mad that I'm saying
you got a lot of rage,
man. I did say they could adjust potencies to make it so that the numbers are still comparable to when warriors did have slashing. I'm just saying that slashing needs to not be tied to a tank, because if it's tied to a tank, that makes warriors absolutely needed for every fight always, right? Which is,
I mean, they're kind of in that position,
like,
right?
if you had a fight where warriors, I guess that doesn't really make sense either, because then you get Berserk and Felcleaves and Berserk, and fuck warriors, dude, whatever. I think slashing just needs to be not tied into a tank, because no other tank does that. No other DPS job needs a tank for optimal damage, right? Like, why is that okay for a one-way interaction with warrior ninja, right? It's not. It's just bad balance. Sorry for the dog in the background, but if you can hear it,
it's okay.
It's bad balance. It's bad game design, at least in terms of game balance. And yeah, I mean, I only have like 2 or 3 years of game balance experience, but it's really bad. It's not a fair or necessary interaction between skills. But meh.
Okay, we'll stop on it.
Yeah.
We'll stop on it. That's fair enough. Locke wants to know, how much damage do you mitigate by ending the fight early. That's kind of a weird question for me to hear, but Miyuki, I'll let you comment on that.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, how much damage do you mitigate by ending the fight early?
That's kind of a hard question to answer because it's fight dependent. Like in A5, if you skip that last concussion, like that's a lot of damage that your healers don't have to heal through.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just kind of the reason I think it's kind of weird is because in the end, at the end of a fight, mitigation, matters to a point, but you're still, if you need to mitigate it, you mitigate it. If you end the fight early, it doesn't really change anything to me because your healers are still going to try to heal it. And if you haven't pushed past that point anyways, you need a little bit more damage out there. I don't know. It just seems weird. Cupcake, do you have any thoughts on it?
You mean ending a fight early?
Yeah,
or?
I don't relate ending a fight early to mitigating damage.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it might make the fight harder to heal because you have less. You have to plan your cooldowns to account for the fact that you might not have them a second time or a third time. But it doesn't make too much of a difference for a tank, except for in DPS. Obviously, you want to the earlier you end after a buff, the better. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really not much.
All right. iBraver,
It's
what?
kind of a hard metric.
Yeah, because killing the fight's killing the fight. It doesn't matter if you mitigate the damage. In the end, if you kill it 10 seconds later, you still do the same amount of, killing the fight. Achievement. That's the achievement, right? To kill the fight. Mitigating damage by just simply ending it early doesn't make sense to me. But, that's weird.
You're roboting again?
Am I roboting again? All right, well, We'll go through these questions anyways. I'll robot ask these, and you can tell me if you understand it or not. iBraver, what would you like a new tank class to be like? Do you have any opinions? Is it just samurai? Is that what you guys are looking for?
I don't know. I wanted a true evasion tank, but I feel like they'd be held to balance.
Yeah. Kind of like, I don't know if you ever played Guild Wars. There's an evasion tank in there, right? Warrior or something? Can't remember. Or was it Terra? Terra had that. But, Miyuki?
Yeah, it's Terra.
Okay. What kind of tank are you looking for?
That's what I would want to. It's
evasion?
I don't think... Yeah. I think the 3 tanks now cover a lot of things besides for actually, like, skillfully dodging attacks.
All right. So it looks like the chat, I don't know, I'm just looking at it. It looks like there's some kind of buffer going on, but I think it might be fixed. I don't know. Voodoo has another question here. What do you say is the most underrated Paladin and Dark Knight skill, offensive or defensive?
Can you repeat that?
Sorry. What would you say is the most underrated Paladin or Dark Knight skill? Offensive, defensive, it doesn't matter. Can't think it? Can't think of it?
Underrated?
Mm-hmm. Miyuki, do you have any?
Probably either Reprisal or Divine Veil.
Reprisal or Divine Veil?
Yeah, I was thinking either Divine Veil or Sheltron, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So going on to one of the last serious questions I'll take, then I'll bust through the rest of the troll questions. What is the job you would recommend to someone who's new to tanking?
Paladin. 100% Paladin.
Miyuki?
I would recommend Warrior if someone wouldn't want to quit tanking because Paladin's pretty dull.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me actually they'd have to start at Paladin because Gladiator is fucking awful. Like once you get to like the 20s and you start get like DPS start getting their third hits and combos, and paladins don't have tank stance and they don't have overpower and they have to rely on flash, that is the most god awful thing in the world. But after 30, when you at least have Sword Oath and you have Halone almost, you have Halone, yeah, you have Halone, and you have the extra damage to hopefully hold hate, it's a little better. But God, Jesus, gladiators are garbage. I don't know why they even allow gladiators to exist the way they do. But
yeah, like the leveling process towards Paladin definitely needs to be fixed in some way because it's really boring and really hard to keep hate like between 30 and 40 for newer players.
Yeah, it's kind of weird going into Paladin and then you're like going through all that early stuff. There's only so much you can do, and people don't know really how to optimize. I think the biggest thing with leveling in Journal for any job is the off global cooldowns and global cooldowns mixing together and trying to optimize that properly. And people don't really see that or find ways to optimize that if they're new to the game leveling up. But I've preached about that for way too much. Paladins is definitely the most boring job to level up. It's really, really hard. Is there any other one that's just like completely ridiculous to level up and you just want to fall asleep while leveling it?
Lancer.
Yeah, Lancer.
Lancer is fucking awful. Oh my god, that's like you don't want to do anything but heavy thrust, impulse drive until you get full thrust, because everything else is just less efficient and worse. So it's just so bad.
Yeah, because you get to that point to where you're using one ability the entire time. What's the impulse or no?
Impulse drive.
Yeah. And so you're just using that for like how many levels? Like 10 levels?
To 26. Yeah, 26? Until you're 26 for full thrust, I believe it is, or 24. I can't remember, but
I think
it's just stupid.
Well, they made a change within the job in 2 point whatever, and I think it just made it not work out as well, right? And that's why it's so goofy at the beginning, or was it like that before then? Because they buffed Dragoons at some point.
They removed the positional on impulse drive so that you always get a potency, but you get buff potency from. No. Okay, so impulse drive used to be a rear positional, and they took that off, and they also took out the heavy thrust penalty from not hitting flank. So now you can, even if you hit it somewhere else, you get a lower potency, but whatever, and then you just spam impulse drive for ages until you get full thrust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so boring.
All right. Next question here. I like Hochacha. I have a question. How do you guys feel about a new tank that uses a hammer and implies a bullet resistant down? Make monks great again.
Well, the thing about monk is that monks just don't contribute to raid DPS. That's the biggest reason why people don't like them. But a new tank period would be great. I don't know.
Okay. Miyuki?
That would be interesting. Maybe make monks more useful, but I'm just worried about how the other things would play out with the class, because it's hard. I think it's hard for them to make something that's not too similar to either warrior or paladin dark.
Okay. All right. Last questions here. Do you feel bad that warriors are always going to be more valuable in the meta, or do you guys? That's like a question we've been answering the entire time, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game. You play it to have fun.
This whole like thing with like warrior stuff is like absolutely kind of over with for me. Like, I don't even care. I'm not doing in-game content where I'm doing cutting-edge stuff. In the end, if you want to play Paladin Dark Knight, you want to play double Paladin, if you guys can clear the content, then do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have fun, then go
It's
ahead.
a game. It's a game, guys. Okay, last question. Crispy, my question for Cupcake was, where is the Corgi at?
Oh no, my Corgi is in Vegas right now.
What?
So my Corgi is joint owned, so that way, and she is with my ex in Vegas right now, and we trade off every so often. But it's been a while since. But yeah, It's she's with my ex right now, and I think the next time I actually get to see her is probably during FanFest when I go to Vegas for that. But yeah, it
Well,
sucks.
that's depressing.
It is. It's very, very depressing, but nothing I can do about it. So whatever.
You can go get her. Go get the
I sh-
corgi.
I could, but I kind of also don't want to deal with the legal implications of stealing a corgi. So it's fine.
Oh man. All right, I think that's enough. We've been going at it for like 3 hours now, guys.
Yeah.
We've hit a lot of pretty good points. Miyuki, do you have any last thoughts that you want to say before we go off the show?
I think we covered most things.
Cool. Cupcake.
Yeah, I think we cover most. The only thing I can see here is Perry. I don't know what the fuck they're gonna do to Perry. One of the questions. Perry just needs to be good. I don't know how. Like I'm not creative enough to think of anything, but
Yeah, if someone wants to actually come back and give us a good theory craft of how to make Perry great, let us know. I mean, it's at this point, it's seen as just a stat that you try to avoid. That's all it is. You're like, how do I get Perry off of my gear? Is there any way to do it? Is it worth losing so much vitality strength to get this Perry off my gear? I mean, that's pretty much it, right?
yeah, I mean, from a design standpoint, it's hard to balance purely because if you make it too strong, even if you made it strong, no one would notice it because it's an invisible stat. You just see it in that little combat text minus 20% parry, right? Right. But then there you don't get anything from it unless you're a Dark Knight. And otherwise it's an invisible stat and it blows right now. It's like barely useful. Sure, you get minus 20% every 5 or so auto attacks, but whatever. It's like so useless right now.
Yeah. Perry's done, man. It's done right now. I mean, they made vitality great again, right?
Yeah, they did.
So, all right. Well, I think that covers up pretty much the entire show here. Sorry for all the buffers and everything else, guys. Like, I don't know what was going on. Whether it's my connection, whether it's Twitch, whether it's whatever. But we still got through it. I am going to put this up on YouTube. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have it up. We'll see. Sometimes it takes a day more if I have issues with the Adobe actually compiling the file properly. But we'll see how that works out. I do want to make sure that the proper people get the proper shoutouts here, because you guys both stream, right?
Not so often anymore, but I did. Yeah.
All right. Do shoutouts right now for whoever you want to shout out, Cupcake.
Oh boy. Well, I shout outs to everyone in the CK link shell. I'm pretty sure they've gotten a shout out before. Everyone from Team Tempest that still plays or is watching this, or both. Everyone in this beautiful exclusive shit posting thing I'm in right now. Everyone on Levy that I'm friends with, and pretty much anyone in Gilga that's watching this, I suppose. Oh, and to my I said I'd say this. What the hell did I say I'd say? To my main cookie homie Jeff. Only she will. Yes, she will know who I'm talking about. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. Miyuki, you have some shoutouts you want to do?
Yeah. Shout out to the Cookie Monster on Cacti. Shout out to my FC Cookie Factory. And shout out to my raid groups, Spriggan Army and NACL.
Yo, I didn't even, sorry to interrupt. I didn't even shout out my current raid group. I'm such an asshole. My current raid group in OMG room. That's Wintrinth, Easy, Logos, might be Demi. I don't know what that is. Rin is running with us right now. Yeah. Did I miss anyone? Oh, and Spec, Car Warrior. Right. I'm a terrible teammate. I'm sorry.
You're terrible at interrupting Miyuki now. You're not
Yeah,
even
I know.
Miyuki, are you?
I just felt really bad. I was looking through my Skype list of people I've been speaking to, and I saw my raid, and I'm like, oh shit.
Miyuki.
Yeah.
Right, now after his rude interruption, who else do you want to shout out?
So shout out to Rinchan for theory crafting with me often.
Yeah, definitely shout out to Rinchan. Yeah. Guy's ridiculously good at what he does. Thank you guys, everyone who watched the show today. I really appreciate you guys watching. It's been a ridiculous show. We've had so many people come into the chat and try to troll. But that's all the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing is, I just want to make sure you guys understand. I do appreciate everyone on Reddit who did apply for or did send these questions out. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of them. You guys definitely made for a very interesting show. I'm glad I could have both you guys on the show. You both gave a lot of really good information. And I also want to make sure to give a shout out to Carrara for actually collecting questions throughout the show and helping making sure your voice is actually heard. Blazana, of course, as much as he wants to yell at me about how I run my raid, thank you very much for the artwork of the show layout and the Moogle that we have here. And Andre Kane for doing the music that he allows me to actually pull for the intro. So next week, I'm actually going to try to do a lighter show for MogTalk. It's going to be about role-playing in Final Fantasy, because I want to actually dive into that world and see what the world of role-playing Final Fantasy looks like, because I've never touched it. And so I don't know if we're just going to invite Balmung and just talk to them about it. How much roleplay is there like on your servers, guys? Do you see it at all?
Yeah.
Too much.
I'm not a fan. Well, okay.
Okay.
Some role playing, I guess, could be cool, but kind of RPing I see is not cool.
Okay. So you see not cool, the people who want to use cover for a leash role playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
The octagon leash fucking paladin. Oh my god, no. That's yeah.
Okay.
Whoa there.
Oh, all right. We won't get too much into that. We'll try to be remotely kid friendly, right?
Yes.
All right. So we need to do a host for somebody, and since you guys are both here, I would like one of you guys or both of you to decisively find out who we need to host. And while we're doing that, I actually am going to pull. Actually, let's do this real quick. Let's do our buys real quick. Our awkward waving. Miyuki, we'll just imagine that you're waving here too, and say bye, guys. Thanks for watching.
See you guys.
Bye guys, thanks for watching.